So let's hope the game does not crash. Apparently it does not. So welcome everybody, this is gonna be the first game in a best of 7 in between Admiral Sun-Shin and Richard the Lionheart as part of a Hidden Cup free show match. The identity of the players is unknown to everybody, including the players themselves. And we are seeing Chinese mirrors here on Arabia. Rich will be playing in blue on the left side, and right side is Admiral Yi. And what stands out is that he's kind of far away from the edge of the map. So what I wanted to point out before we get deeper into this series, now we are actually seeing a series in which the new balance is used. The qualifiers had the old balance being utilized, but now it's the new patch being used. And also, there were some minor modifications to the maps, so we will see that in the High Tide game, that they are playing a somewhat newer version of the maps, and that could implicate a few changes in strategies. Anyways, interesting to see that we are seeing Chinese mirrors on Arabia, but Chinese overall is a very good Arabia civ, and more importantly, we have El Dorado banned out as a map, and El Dorado is probably the most reasonable place to use Chinese in this tournament. So with no El Dorado, it's quite reasonable to have Chinese available on Arabia. Is laming allowed? I think it's not. I'm not 100% sure, but it appears that it is not an allowed thing. I will check it in the AoE zone post, but I don't think it's allowed. It wasn't allowed in the qualifiers, and I would be heavily surprised if they changed that rule for the main event. Anyways, looking at the map of Rich over here in blue on the left, he's gonna be able to vault off over here on the left side, securing this gold. He might not even want to contest this gold, even though if he can vault here, it would be very nice. That would secure double golds. But worst case scenario, he can vault in between the gold and the wood, and like this, and he's still gonna have a gold available to him. Stone is also quite nice for him, which is nice for a Chinese player, because he could think about switching to early Chu canoes. So vault off here and vault off here, and you basically have gold and stone available. Might even see a Drush FC Crossbowmen play here from him and then switch into Chu canoes. That could be a reasonable approach here for Richard, because he has a good map for a Drush FC type of a play. On the other side, Admiral Yi, I don't like this map that much, to be honest. The stone is quite exposed. The bigger concern is that the gold is all exposed, basically. Neither of them are easy to wall. I guess for Yi, he will have to wall something like this in an L shape in between the stone and this wood line, and like this, to make sure the gold is safe. And since we are talking about Chinese as your opponent, you can't just wall using the gold itself and then mine behind, because there's a high chance that you will probably see archers coming your way. So you will have to wall this You will have to wall this gold around, otherwise you are gonna be in big trouble. Pushing the deer towards the TC is Admiral Yi to start off with. And meanwhile, on the other side, where's the mill at? Okay, there is the mill coming in. 3 villagers only on wood for Richard, and that means that he's apparently going for scouts here. A somewhat surprising move, considering that his base is definitely suitable, like I said, for a Drush FC Crossbowman type of a play. Maybe Man-at-Arms Archers is reasonable as well, but I would say Drush FC Crossbows is just much more reasonable to me with this kind of a map. But he's gonna go for the scouts opening, and meanwhile, on the other side of things, Admiral Yi appears to go for 4 on wood. Could be anything basically right now, with the exception of scouts. Could be Drush FC, could be a focus on Man-at-Arms Archers. The interesting thing to point out is that he's pushing the deer, so when not scouting at 6 minutes, this is not going to be a Drush coming up from Admiral Yi. So I'm more about thinking either Man-at-Arms Archers or straight up Archer is gonna be the plan here. No villagers still going for Brax, so high chances for a straight-up Archers play from Admiral Yi, which would be somewhat of a head-scratcher, to be honest, because his map is not very suitable for such an approach. Meanwhile, neither of the players walling themselves at all, so both players playing open. That should benefit Richard, to be honest, because he's gonna be probably up faster, but ends up going for a quite late click-up here. What's the plan here, Richard? This is super slow for a scout's opening, but he just had 3 on wood initially, as we're finally gonna have Admiral Yi finding the town center of his opponent. He's gonna turn back, and he is unable to pick off a villager over here because this villager does have loom, so this is not going to happen here for Admiral Yi. Both players pick up at fairly identical times. What is interesting is that Admiral Yi does have 1 extra villager. I don't know how he pulled that off, but seems like Richard had more idle time than he wanted, and that's not a great start for a blue here. Like, 21 villagers will have same feudal age time as compared to Admiral Yi, who is doing 22 villagers. And this appears to be indeed just straight up archers for him. Barracks will come up over here, followed by probably one range, maybe even double ranges, but I would think that it's probably going to be range and blacksmiths. There's the barracks coming up for Richard as well. So for Richard, I still stand by my decision to say that this is going to be a scouts opening. You also have to account for the Chinese villager bonus at the start, so this is why the villager counts will be still messed up. And that might be the reason why he's clicking up a bit too late for a scouts opening. But I would say that this is still a fairly reasonable click up time, especially for Admiral Yi, who does have, like I said, one extra villager compared to Blue, and both players do have looms, so it's not a difference in between the players in terms of having loom accessible to them. So, with it, it's time for a stable indeed for Richard. So I was just tricked by the villager counts because of the Chinese, but this will end up being a standard-ish scouts build coming up from Richard. He's gonna wall of the left as expected alongside the middle as well, and he's just gonna wall here to finish it off. He's gonna be fully walled, and that means that it appears that Yi is also going for scouts. Now, I don't blame him for doing that, to be honest, especially with such a bad gold. But 22 villagers, scouts, feels weird to me. Anyways, we are going to have some scouts plus spears combat over here. The interesting thing is gonna be that Richard will be fully walled by the time Admiral Yi's scouts will arrive. And that means that, well, Green is not gonna be able to do any kind of damage to his opponent over here. It is gonna be all about Richard trying to harass Green, and Admiral Yi is playing wide open. His gold is exposed, his Lumberjacks are exposed. Of course, quick walls could save him, but I feel like playing this open when your opponent is also going for scouts is very, very dangerous. And for Admiral Yi, he will not be able to do any kind of that. Retry. He will not be able to do any kind of damage. So, 3 scouts moving inside here for Richard. I don't think that he has a lot of scouting information. In fact, he has. He does see the gold mine, he does see the double wood lines, and he's gonna go on the initial wood line of his opponent. Will be spotted by Admiral Yi, I am almost certain indeed. Let's see if quick walls will arrive or not. Nice quick walls there from Yi, and his villagers on the wood line will be fully walled. Berry villagers also dropping some walls. Very nice kills there from Admiral Yi. And remember, about predictions, this guy can wall quite nicely, but does not like war maps. That's something to take a look at. Oh, Robo, thanks for answering that question. So laming is allowed, and that's going to be a villager pick coming up here from Rich, but he's going to end up bumping into a spearman over there, losing some HP. He might even be able to pick off this villager because the other forces from Admiral Yi is so far away. He is going to be fully walled at some time, but losing one villager is a quite significant deficit to overcome now. So we will have 4 scouts available for Richard, but he's fully walled. And, well, Admiral Yi is behind by a villager now, which is a significant deficit, like I said. Anyways, this spearman is gonna go down, and Admiral Yi finally moving inside. So far, if I had to make my prediction on Admiral Yi, I would say it's MBL. But, of course, that can change, and I'll probably have like 15 different people as my predictions coming up here right now. This is interesting though, there is the scouts running inside, Spearman and TC will be more than enough to push them away. And numbers advantage on the side of Admiral Yi, so he wants to engage this one. With Spearman coming inside, this is not something that Richard can fight. There is the next Spearman Narino moving inside. Oops, can you stab? Nope, no stab-rinos. Anyways, Richard already consumed his berries. That's a bit fast consumption of those berries, as there is indeed gonna be the archer switch coming in here, so scouts into archers. Definitely a reasonable way of playing things, and I would expect the same thing from Admiral Yi because in Chinese mirrors you are probably better off with the archer plays instead of going for scouts into knights. So both players dropping their archer ranges. It's worth pointing out that Richard is actually hiding his archer range over here on the left. This is a bit of a Hera move, and of course, this is not a very, very confirmed thing, but Hera does this very frequently, that he hides his switch behind his walls. I've casted a large number of Hera games in the recent times, and that is just a so common thing to see here from Hera. Now, there is one Spearman protecting this villager over here, but the scouts might be able to pick it off. Let's see, the Spearman is going down, but reinforcements will arrive just in time, so the walls will probably go up over here, especially with Rich not paying attention to his scouts, so he's gonna be forced back for now. Archers coming in for both players. The second range is gonna be a bit later for Admiral Yi here. But anyways, let's see, cancellation times. Richard is kind of far away, but not super distant. Meanwhile, for Admiral Yi, this seems like a faster click-up possibility for him very soon in this one. So 4 Vultures deficit for Admiral Yi, probably because of Wheelbarrow that is also playing a role in this one. But it's more about the fact that he has lost 1 Vulture, which is going to be a significant deficit, like I said. So with that, there is going to be the scouts bashing their way through this gate. No damage is done, but at least Richard will actually spot that there is archer switch coming against him. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, there is going to be double range archers production. There is no blacksmith from Rich, if I'm not mistaken. Indeed, there is no blacksmith. Probably the blacksmith will come up at the left side to reinforce this wall and make sure there is going to be no entry on that wall. And it appears that Richard will wait with his archers until he goes to Castle Age and use them as crossbows. And meanwhile, Admiral Yi is pushing forward. He still has a bunch of scouts, and more importantly, he's going to have a significant advantage going into Castle Age. So this is going to be a major advantage, and I'm not sure if Richard is going to be able to protect his base against this one. Richard is still trying to hide the archer switch, by the way. So if you take a look at the map, Richard has no archers out there on the field. So Admiral Yi still is not sure if his opponent is going to go knights or if his opponent is going to go for archers, trying to scout that with the leftover scouts he has, and he's just going to bump into a few spearmen to rush back. But, well, he probably suspects an archer switch because he does not see a second stable, and it would make sense to drop a second stable close to your wall so you can pop out those knights straight away. So I would say that Admiral Yi is probably aware of his opponent switching into archers as well, but he's going to have a decent advantage going into Castle Age. Where are the archers at, though? They're just moving out. Military numbers better for Admiral Yi, though. Wait, no. It's better for Richard. Richard with 20, and that's going to be a lot of archers. So, unless Admiral Yi can do damage in the next 1 or 2 minutes, the military advantage is going to be on the side of Richard because he's going to have a lot more crossbows available to him. Also, he does have archer armor, that's something to point out. Admiral Yi already has researched archer armor as well. He's gonna go for crossbowmen and botkin arrow here, and those archers will just pick off that spearman very easily. So these scouts have very little chance of actually being able to do major damage to this army right now. And it is gonna be Richard who has to secondary this wall. I think there might be a hole right next to the house and in between the wood line and the house. And with the crossbows here, with the scouts here, this is gonna be a very fast gate destruction here for green. And indeed, there is a hole, and this is the time, like I said, you have 1 minute to do damage. This is the 1 minute I was talking about. Archers will have to pop up, but this is a bad fight for Richard. He's losing his military advantage here because he's fighting with +1/+1 archers against almost fully upgraded Castle Age crossbowmen. There is going to be crossbowmen and botkin finally coming in, but I think Richard has lost some precious numbers. And this basically means that the armies equal out. Still, Rich has 4 Vultures lead, which is quite significant. And no additional town center is coming in for him right now. So there is going to be double range crossbows and an early university from Yi. He already has the second TC up by now, and you can see that Richard is going to be late with that. University is up for ballistics for himself as well. So we'll continue with some archer fights to no one's major surprise, I would say. Anyways, eco numbers still benefiting Richard a tiny bit, but I'm fairly certain that we might not have wheelbarrow for Richard, yeah. It just feels so weird that he's having that big Vulture lead this early in the game. So I would say that there is a high chance that he doesn't have wheelbarrow. Anyways, I think it's time for some aggressiveness maybe from blue. Let's see. Meanwhile, I'm also noticing that he is missing ballistics still. How did he actually miss ballistics for this long? Like, he constructed university way faster than what we have seen from Richard, and he ends up having a later ballistics. That's a bit of a mistake here because, well, with that, he's gonna be in the danger. Anyways, a ballistics will arrive just now for him, and a fairly aggressive TC on their gold mine, as we do have some crossbows looping around trying to bash their way in. In fact, a few villagers will evacuate from the wood line and the farms, but no major damage was done, if I'm not mistaken. I don't see any corpses, so there is indeed no damage done. Admiral Yi has noticed that the crossbows are on the right side, bashing through the walls. He's just evacuated the Verges. So TC up here on the front, and you also have 2 additional ones for Admiral Yi for a total of 3, and he's smashing through the forces of Richard over here on the left side. +1/+2 for both sides, so it's a fairly even fight in terms of upgrades. And for now, Admiral Yi just wants to do damage to his opponent here. 3 town centers for Richard as well, alongside the defensive siege workshop. As on the right side, we also have a decent matchup here. Admiral Yi is just smashing through the forces of Richard right now. Voyager counts dead even, but military numbers seem to favor Admiral Yi right now, as he also appears to have a bit more map control for himself. So for Admiral Yi, he could just start harassing the wood lines here. In fact, neither of the wood lines for Richard are super safe. Somehow a spearman got inside, I have no idea how. Maybe the gate was opened, I can imagine that, but if you take a look at this enveloping move, this is beautiful from Admiral Yi. He's harassing the woodland on the right side with the crossbows, and simultaneously, he's gonna push the left side as well, basically pushing away from his opponent from all accessible wood. Right now, Richard still has some lumberjacks around here and here, but this is horribly inefficient right now, taking that straggler tree instead of like taking the wood line over here, which would be much more efficient. And there is going to be a forward siege workshop from Admiral Yi. 3 ranges now for Richard, so he would have a decent production, as I do see only 2 ranges coming up from Yi. 5 on stone makes me believe that we are getting closer and closer to a forward castle at some time. We are having way more stone villagers from Richard though, so it's already... what is that? It's 7 villagers on stone, so I would assume that he wants to drop a defensive castle at some time as well. Yet again, harassment on the left side moving inside, as Richard will add TC number 4 here. Beautiful mango shot coming in from Richard, and there's gonna be the counter mango coming up from Admiral Yi. I like how this siege workshop, by the way, is on top of this little hill here. That is gonna help out protecting it quite a bit. And you're gonna have archer fights coming in here. Identical upgrades for the 2 players, but it appears that Richard does have the numbers advantage here. So this is not really something that Admiral Yi can fight against, especially considering that he's getting torn apart before he would even engage. So I think this is the moment when you're cornered. You just want to trade off your crossbows to the opponent's crossbows over here. Meanwhile, in the middle, that's a beautiful attempt to kill that mango. Indeed, that is going to happen. Admiral Yi not losing his own mango while trading off basically just a few HP for the mango of Richard over here. But meanwhile, on the left side, Admiral Yi has lost considerable amounts of crossbowmen. So, this Voyager is meant to repair this mangonel, and let's see. I don't think that Admiral Yi can do any major damage to Voyagers. Maybe he can pick off like 1 or 2 here, but it's really just a minor amount of Voyagers being picked off. And Richard piling up more and more crossbows inside his ranges. This is an interesting thing. He's not sending them out directly, he's just piling them up right now. Meanwhile, interesting to point out that Admiral Yi, despite the fact that they have identical Voyager counts, Admiral Yi has enough resources to pick up the Imperial. Meanwhile, Richard has basically nothing. He's committing 8 Voyagers to stone, 9 Voyagers is the commitment from Admiral Yi, who is clicking up the Imperial just now. How is this even possible that Admiral Yi had so much better eco? He was faster to Castle Age, so he did pop out Voyagers a bit faster, probably had his upgrades a bit faster as well. But this is still a major advantage for a player that did not really do a lot of damage to Richard's eco. Like, Richard did take some beating, had some idle time on the Lumberjacks, but basically, aside from that, there was no major harm done. Now, it appears that Richard wants to loop around and get some Voyager picks over here on the left side. Meanwhile, the middle seems to be a stalemate, even though Richard does have the numbers. I think this is perfectly fine for Admiral Yi, because he's gonna have Arbalasts very soon available to him, and probably will be accompanied by a forward castle. Okay-ish castle, I would say. Would have been better, I think, if you go for this one until you or after you reach Imperial, because you will have the military superiority for a more aggressive castle. This is more about a defensive castle, I would say, but it's nicely on the hill. And it's gonna be actually quite decent, because the defensive castle here from Richard will be over here. For now, this castle will be stopped, which is gonna delay the trap production quite considerably here from Admiral Yi. So even though he started constructing his castle faster, his opponent will have the castle up first. However, like I said, major advantage going into Imperial for Admiral Yi, and that means he's gonna have traps faster. You can see that Richard is just piling up his resources going into Imperial, and that is gonna be like about 4 minutes of a difference in between the Imperial age times of the players. That is at minimum 2 traps for Admiral Yi to start trapping this castle down, and he will also have Arbalasts available to him here. He already has 4 ranges to work with. Meanwhile, 4 ranges there as well for Richard, but he's just gonna have crossbows. He has +2/+2. Same are the upgrades for Admiral Yi here, but What really matters is the imp time right now. Slight advantage in eco counts for Richard, but that is not something that can help you overcome such big deficit in terms of military units now. Thing is that Richard can still take this fight because the upgrades are still even. So this is why Richard is so aggressive here. He wants to make sure he can get some value for his crossbows before his opponent would actually get the upgrades. And interestingly, we are missing out on Arbalest upgrade coming up from Admiral Yi, so we might end up having 2 canoes here and not going for Arbalests. Bracer is on the way, and now with Bracer, this is supposed to be a better fight for Admiral Yi, but there is a bunch of Mangonels coming in, and that's a lot of Verges picked off over here, so I would say that Richard has taken a fairly decent fight over here. He's still far from Imperial, but he has 14 Verges lead, and so far, Admiral Yi couldn't use his Imperial advantage at all, to be honest. There's gonna be a first castle being set up, as it appears that there was a sneaky Verge from Admiral Yi. I'm not sure what his plan was with the house here, but this ultimately failed. So, second trap coming in very soon, and the Arbalest upgrade on the way as well. Elite skirms in the making for Richard, so he has to incorporate a few skirms into this army. And I wonder if that is going to be the case for Admiral Yi, or is he planning to just add a few onagers to deal with this one, but he will need an answer to those skirmishers very soon. For now, this is not something that Richard can actually fight. That could be a beautiful mango shot, but ultimately missing. And I feel like what Richard wants to achieve here, he wanted to loop around and get into the eco by the time he reaches Arbalest. Nice snipes there from Admiral Yi, picking off 2 mangonels. And there's going to be another defensive castle coming up from Admiral Yi. I like that quite a bit. It secures the southern part of Admiral Yi's base, but he's still open on the right side. Want to take a look at something while we are not having any kind of fighting here in the middle, is that Admiral Yi is missing out on the right side gold mine over here, which could be a crucial piece of information for him in the future. So, yep, that's not great. He does see the gold mine on the left though, but not seeing that neutral gold mine is going to hurt him in the long run. He's going to TC the other secondary gold just now. And the castle goes down from Richard. That is going to hurt him quite a bit because, well, that means no Chukanus. More importantly, that means no traps coming up here very soon. I don't think that Richard was able to get conscription out of that castle. So, basically, losing that castle is going to hurt him quite a bit because now Admiral Yi can go for conscription, and that is going to give him an overall bigger advantage against a player without conscription. So, meanwhile, skirmishers, though, is not something that Admiral Yi has any kind of answer to, unless he starts mixing some onagers, and that is exactly what we are actually seeing here. Onager is a bit later arriving, so these mangonels could be still snapped down, but for now, it appears that Richard is just playing very, very defensive, and he's gonna take a fairly okay engagement against those Arbalests here. He still has the Arbs to snap down mangoes, but once onagers arrive, this is gonna be a tough one for Richard to handle. The Brax is gonna go down, but more importantly, overall, if the archer ranges start going down, this could be a trouble coming up for Richard. Now, for Admiral Yi, I could make an argument for mixing a few light cavalry to deal with those skirmishers. That could be a decent idea. Onagers work quite as well, but you could use... Oh man, that could have been a big shot. Still, onagers... Oh man, one onager goes down, but you could still land a decent shot. No siege engineers on these guys, so... 8-range Arbs can still do decent damage to them from a decent range. Still, 2 of those onagers alive. Onagers can't really get into combat, so I think this is still an okay one here for Richard. In fact, this is a quite decent one. He's using... Oh man, I just jinxed it. I jinxed it so hard. There is the big boom happening, and even with the 2 onagers going down, this is going to be a major advantage now for Admiral Yi here. He doesn't have a considerable amount of military advantage, but... when you already start pushing here, there is going to be the skirmishers being mixed in as well for Admiral Yi. Siege Ram is going to be the answer from Richard, but against onagers that will not work very, very exceptionally. And like I said, Admiral Yi could just start mixing in a few light cavalry to deal with this one. So there is going to be a bunch of rams coming in, mostly kept rams with siege rams. There's the first stable coming up for a few light cavalry. But still, these light cavalry is just more about sniping on the onagers right now, but I feel like Richard is just too late with this one. He's already getting heavily pushed here with traps, with onagers, with Arbs. And I feel like Admiral Yi, if he just makes a composition of skirms and archers, he's gonna be more than happy to take this game. He can start trapping down TCs, he can start trapping down to the production buildings. That will be quite crucial, because you can see that Richard is still popping out archers and skirms out of these buildings. If you can trap down the ranges, you can delay your opponent's advance towards that. Richard has a decent position on the left and right side, but the direct engagements is not something that he can take right now. Tries to take down this castle here in the middle, but will end up... I think this was cancelled. I was just looking away for a second, and, well, guess what? There is gonna be the castle going down, but, well, Stables coming in here, like I said, light cavalry will be just enough to deal with these siege rams, but even the onagers can hold their own against them quite well. So as you can see, by the time these siege rams arrive, they're losing a lot of HP, and that could be another beautiful shot. Onagers landing some shots on the archers. This is more than okay trades here for Admiral Yi. Traps are a bit in danger because of the rams, but now that the light cavalry are coming out, they can start smashing those rams. Please don't lose your traps here. But right now, this is looking like a much better scenario for Admiral Yi. He has double the military, he has even villager counts, and he does have the momentum, he does have the light cavalry, so he can start raiding very soon into the eco of his opponent, as basically the base of Richard is in flames right now. So, with this, there is going to be probably a game advantage here for Admiral Yi, because I don't see how Richard could turn this around. Like, sure, you could start mixing light cavalry and start picking off the onagers, but overall this is just so hard to stop, because if you just take a look at the overall composition of Admiral Yi, the numbers that he's using, you don't have the time to switch into something unless you land some absolutely amazing onager shots. This is gonna be insanely hard to fight. Both players do have considerable amount of idols, by the way, on their TCs, but it's more importantly the fact that slowly but surely Richard is getting pushed back. It appears that he's gonna allocate a lot of voyages to the right side. We'll have a castle up over here as well, but he doesn't have the military to take direct engagements. That's the problem. He's consistently having half the military as his opponent does, and that is more than enough for Admiral Yi to push this one. Production going down will mean that Richard will struggle to mass more and more units into this combat, and that is more than enough for Admiral Yi right now. Even though I don't think that Admiral Yi has found his gold mine over here on the right side, Richard is using one of his leftover scouts here to just guard that gold mine. Of course, it's more about having an info on whether or not your opponent is actually going for it, but against that many onagers, pure skirms will not really work. And look at all these buildings going down from Richard. He's very stubborn, trying not to give up on this game, but honestly, he's gonna lose the middle of his base. He's gonna get his empire cut into two pieces. Defensive castles coming up over here, but with 4 traps, they're just melting castles so hard. 22 idols at 147 villager counts for Rich, but still, now the light cavalry raids will intensify for Admiral Yi. He has a +4 armor now, and he's just gonna go for iron casting. And redemption for Richard. Interesting. So, once to convert those onagers, the problem is that he's getting flooded by so many units, like light cavalry, arbalest, skirmishers, 66 military here for Admiral Yi. A few redemption monks will not change this one, to be honest. That's the problem. So, green is good enough to snap down the monks first with his units and then engage with the onagers. Like, it would work if this was, let's say, early Castle Age, and you would only have a few mangonels, but in such low military numbers for Richard and such high military numbers for Admiral Yi, there's no way that you can actually convert those onagers fast enough not to let your monks die. And indeed, there is going to be Admiral Yi winning game number 1 here. Very confident plays from him, I would say. And overall, the ecos were fairly even for the entire game. It was just Admiral Yi somehow being able to go up into Imperial faster. Green feels like doubt. Well, I always want to bring up the draft that they have made. Where is that? Green is definitely not Viper or Taro, I think, because they wouldn't ban islands. There is a chance Green could be Doubt, although I feel like Doubt is also decent on war maps. I was thinking MBL, to be honest, so far for Admiral Yi. That is my prediction. For this one, for Richard, could be anyone, but yeah, I have no idea on this guy for now. We'll have to check how he plays on hybrid maps, how he plays on war maps, but Doubt seems like a reasonable guess, because the macro management overall was great for Admiral Yi. Are these final names or just for today? I don't have any official confirmation on that, and I think they will be revealed after the event. So, or after this show match, to the best of my knowledge. So, anyways, we are going to go into game number 2. Relic count is also not much better though from Richard. That's something to point out. So Richard is one of the players who focuses on relics quite a bit. That applies to a lot of players, but I'm still puzzled on who this guy could be. Anyways, I think it's time for game number 2, and we will jump in there in like a second. Where is game number 2? We're going into Bay, which is the home map of Richard. Mongol Mirrors will be played in this one. So welcome everybody, game number 2 in a best of 7 in between Richard the Lionheart and Admiral Sun-Shin. It's gonna be a show match for Hidden Cup free, $200 sponsored by T90 and Microsoft, I think, because I think that Microsoft sponsoring also goes for some show matches to promote the event itself. So yeah, this is Bay, home map of Richard the Lionheart, who lost game number 1. Mongol Mirrors we're taking a look at, and the first thing that stands out is that Richard has a much better map overall. So gold is quite safe. It's easy to wall here on the shoreline. Maybe even you can include your stone if you really want, but I think it's super easy to wall off. You have the deer fairly easily pushable as well towards your TC, so this is a beautiful starting map for Rich. And on the other side, quite awful Admiral Yi. You are wide open from the north. Walling this off is insanely hard, to be honest. In fact, this is almost impossible to wall off early on. Stones quite exposed, both of them on the front. Gold is also quite exposed, I would say. There's just nowhere to wall, and also limited wood access for Admiral Yi. So he will have to expand quite rapidly towards the other woodlands over here. Probably in the future we are going to see a town center over here in between the wood line and the gold. But overall, very little wood on the side of Admiral Yi's map, to be honest. I wonder if you can just change the names in the replay and then recycle all games. Theoretically you can do that, but casters do remember old games. So this will not work that way. These are new games, I am fairly certain. These are new games. Anyways, Mongol Mirrors on this map, not super surprising. This is, like I said, the first home map of Richard, whose identity is unknown, of course. And the thing is that he likes to have a hybrid map. This was his first home map. So definitely not a player like the Fat Dragon or MBL or so, I would say. In fact, right now my current guess for Admiral Yi is MBL, and no idea about Richard. But I guess once we finish this series, I will have a very strong guess. I think after game number 4, as I read Robo's message on the caster Discord, we will get to know the guesses of the players. So the players themselves don't know who they are playing against, but they will also take part in the guessing, and that's gonna be an important factor. Anyways, for a Mongol start, this is a quite late boiler. Just want to trace it back to the charity tournament I casted a couple of hours before. And is this a lame? This appears to be indeed a lame. This is MBL. This is so MBL, man. Like I said, hates war maps, lames his opponent. Who else but MBL? Like, you don't even have to be super strong with your game knowledge to guess this one. I would be heavily surprised if this wasn't MBL in green. So he's gonna lame a board for himself, which is a massive advantage initially with Mongols. You have amazing hunt, and that means that has to be a lame, right? There's no way that this is his own board luring it in with the scout. Technically you could lure in your own board with your scout, but I feel like that is just not something that you would normally do. Full HP on Richard's scout, so he did not lame him. Did I miss out on Admiral Yi taking his boars? Yes, they did choose the colors for themselves. This is why we're actually having green and blue. Although, I feel like probably players were asked to choose some neutral colors. So, I wouldn't be surprised if Viper wasn't using yellow. Because yellow being used for Viper is just so you know, easy to guess. So, I can totally imagine Robo asking Viper, hey, please don't use yellow if it's possible. But yeah, they are picking colors for themselves, as far as I know. And they cannot change the colors during the series. So, with blue getting lamed over here, this means that he will have to venture out towards some hunt over here. But luckily, at least, he will be able to land some shots on Admiral Yi's scout here, because Admiral Yi's scout is weak. But with such a good food eco initially, Admiral Yi is going to be able to pull off a 21 pop up with double fishing ships here. This is going to be a massive war lead for him, and a very good start for his Bay game over here. You can tell that this was his initial plan. So in the qualifiers you couldn't lame. Now you can actually lame your opponent and take away his boar with your own scout. And because Mongols do have a great hunting bonus, that means that you will have a very good food eco at the beginning, you will get up to Feudal Age quite fast, and you will have double dogs to spam fire. Guys, look at that. Richard is just about to click up into Caso or Feudal Age. By the time Admiral Yi reaches Feudal, Admiral Yi will have very easy warrior control over here. He's just gonna cat warrior for himself so easily, and you can tell that Richard is just walling himself off. Richard's food eco is gonna be absolutely horrible. In fact, where is all of his sheep at? Did he also get some of his sheep lamed? There's a lot of sheep available for Admiral Yi, but I think it's just his leftover sheep from Dark Age. But you can already see that Richard's food eco is gonna be a major cause of concern. He's gonna go out for the hunt. But considering how easy it is going to be for Admiral Yi to win war, I do expect Admiral Yi to just add like 3 fire galleys, win war for himself, and then maybe go for land aggression in... Now, Admiral Yi's base, like I said, is super exposed, and he's just going out for the hunt. That is going to be a problem if Richard goes for an aggressive approach, and with 4 villagers moving forward, this is going to be a towering attempt. Let's see what Richard can see of Admiral Yi's base. Nothing. But he sees the double stones, and this is enough to convince him to go for a towering attempt. You know that your opponent starts with 2 towers. If you land a tower in between the 2 stones, you will be able to deny your opponent from both available stone piles, and this could be still good for Admiral or for Richard. If he's able to take away both stone piles, you will be able to contest this gold, and basically like 3 towers here for Richard could cut away Admiral Yi from basically all accessible minerals. And that would be a disaster for Admiral Yi. Like I said, with the water control he has, I would say that he needs to start adding additional fishing ships though, especially once he destroyed this dock. So patrol the shoreline, make sure that Richard cannot add additional docks once you destroy this one, and go for a fish boom. You win war so that you can actually fish boom. That is the #1 thing. Forward barracks, forward stable coming up over here. Barracks being rushed up by Admiral Yi as well, probably noting that, hey, my opponent is not going for any kind of war aggression. That means that he's coming forward or he's making scouts at home. And that is indeed the case here for Rich. And I think that Admiral Yi has spotted the villagers forward as well. He probably knows that there is going to be towers coming his way. Stopping those towers is a different thing though, as you already have the first spearman for both players coming up over here. For now, I think Admiral Yi is just going to play defensive spearmans. And he's going to have the better eco, let's not forget that. So as long as he holds on to this gold pile over here, I think he's going to be more than happy with what he can actually achieve. Because he's gonna have way better eco counts. You can see 3 villagers advantage, that is because of the 3 fishing ships we are talking about. And it appears that Richard is gonna go all in with his villagers. That means that Rich has a very horrible eco right now, no gold income or anything. Admiral Yi might need to bail out on his huntables in this one, because there's more and more scouts coming inside, and this is how Richard could actually get some picks here. But I gotta say that this is not a great start from Richard. Like, sure, he's doing some damage and idling some villagers, but as long as Admiral Yi does have his war eco, even trading evenly in the villager fights could be beautiful, as, look at that, there is 1 villager going down from Richard, no villagers lost from Admiral Yi just yet, he just swarming this base with spearmen. I don't see any villagers, okay, there is 1 villager dying here from Admiral Yi, so I think it's 1 villagers lost on each side. Some idle time is forced on Admiral Yi, but like I said, as long as you do have the fishing eco like the one from Admiral Yi, I think he's gonna be more than happy. I think there was some fishing ships going down though, maybe a demo raft from Admiral or from Richard is probably the one that did enough damage to kill 2 of them, but it doesn't really matter for Admiral Yi because he can still add additional fishing ships. This is a good scout raid though, he could pick off a few villagers on gold. It appears that he's gonna find 1 target here on the house. You gotta commit to that one, but the villager will die before reaching the TC, not enough firepower on the TC. Gold miners will be safe momentarily, but at this point, this is gonna be a bit of harassment being done by Richard. The name of the game for Admiral Yi is War Boom. Really just War Boom, as he's gonna start in archer range, so he can pick off the spearman of his opponent. Spears and archers feels like a reasonable thing here right now for Admiral Yi. Meanwhile, Richard is trying to find an angle to pick off a villager over here. Some of them are weak, but not super weak. You just need to keep those spearmen close to your villagers on the hunt, and that's gonna be okay. And meanwhile, for Richard though, he's committing a lot to this feudal aggression. Like I said, the main issue for Rich is gonna be that Admiral Yi can just always go more heavy on war in terms of fishing eco. Even with fish traps, he's gonna be absolutely okay because you will have more eco as it is. So as long as we are not reaching Castle Age, having that fish advantage is gonna be major for Admiral Yi. He still has a lot of deep fish to work with. And now, All you need to watch out for is not to let Richard redock over here. I could see an argument for Richard trying to sneak a dock up here, but it appears that he's just going to move forward. He wants to tower the docks. That's actually a smart idea. Because if you tower the docks, these fishing ships will get harassed and they will slowly go down. So it's a good idea, and this tower also allows you to bash your way into the base of Admiral Yi. So this is a very, very good tower from Richard. I gotta give credit to him. And I'm not sure if Admiral Yi has the tools to stop this one. The name of the game for Admiral Yi would be something like a forward Verges and drop a dock over here if he wants to be safe with his fishing eco. It's a weird way of countering that, and there is gonna be the galleys as a response coming in here from Admiral Yi. He wants to slowly take down that tower, but indeed his fishing eco is gonna have some troubles here. Wouldn't be surprised to see, like I said, a dock on here or here, somewhere where it's safe from this tower. I like how Richard is rolling this tower around. It's actually something that some players forget, but this is what I was referencing to. Slowly these fishing ships will die, and more importantly, once you run out of deep fish, you will not be able to drop fish traps here right next to your docks, because guess what, this tower is just gonna destroy your fishing ships. Anyways, additional scouts added here from Admiral Yi himself, so he wants to move forward as one. It appears that he's gonna go for the hunt of his opponent. Richard will already leave his hunt here before those guys would arrive, and we're gonna have stone mining coming up here from Rich. He's getting close to clicking up to Castle Age, and meanwhile on the other side, Admiral Yi is not that much ahead in Castle Age time, to be honest. So I would still assume that there's gonna be at least like 3 or 4 minutes until we don't see Castle Age coming up from either of the players. That could be a beautiful villager pick though. Villager survives at 1 HP, but then picked off by the skirms. So I gotta say that Richard is rebounding quite nicely with this aggressive approach. And I feel like at this point, Admiral Yi should just bail out on these huntables. It's not worth risking that many Voyager lives for a few deer, especially when your opponent has already taken his deer. Now, the archers are supposed to be stopping the villagers from re-rolling this one, so you gotta attack this surface, and then the archers need to stop. No fletching though means that this house probably cannot be stopped. So I think the opportunity was there when these villagers were constructing this house. Like, archers, focus on this villager, by the way. Meanwhile, it appears that Admiral Yi is slowly cleaning up the forces here of Richard, and that is a disaster. I think the spearmen did manage to engage very well against the scouts of Richard, and that means that now we have a very big army here from Admiral Yi, and he could push forward. The problem is that his opponent has a forward base, and oh boy, this could be 3 villagers picked off here. No quick walls from Richard, and that means 3 villagers will die. And on the other side of things, this re-walling is kind of slowed down. I think Richard will be able to hold the line here for the time being, but I would say that Admiral Yi, with heavy emphasis on war, he's gonna have 3 villagers lead. Even though the tower is doing some harassment, I think the moral of the story is that while Admiral Yi has warrior control, well, to be honest, he has warrior control, he's the Admiral, so I'm not actually surprised about that. What stands out is the 22 military compared to 2. Defensive tower built by Richard, but still there's a lot of surface to attack here for Admiral Yi. Like, this position could be exposed, and Admiral Yi is gonna be faster going into Castle Age. That looks very bad, to be honest, for Richard. I love these walls, by the way, from Admiral Yi. So he's gonna side wall these buildings around, make sure that no further units can actually pop out of these. It's a cost-efficient way of dealing with these buildings until you don't have siege. And there is indeed the forward dock I was referencing to. When you have a tower harassing your fishing eco at the back like this, you will probably just go for a forward dock and do it that way. And meanwhile, Richard is gonna stonewall himself completely, but he's gonna be behind in Castle Age time. This will probably mean that we are gonna have a forward siege workshop coming up here with Crossbowmen being researched probably from Admiral Yi. Maybe even light cavalry is something he's going to consider. And with a fairly heavy emphasis on stone, I could imagine him dropping 2 town centers initially, one of them on the stone pile and one of them maybe on the gold pile over here to secure it, or here is also a reasonable spot, because he is stockpiling a lot of wood, so I would say that 2 town centers seems reasonable, but it's gonna be shortly followed up by a forward siege workshop, and then probably a forward castle. There is gonna be a few skirmishers harassing, but in reality these are not achieving anything major, so this is gonna get cleaned up. Castle Age is on the way for Richard as well, but like I said, Admiral will have the advantage going into Castle Age, and let's see where the town centers will get dropped. Forward dock apparently did get cancelled, and there is no forward siege workshop either. So crossbow and botkin arrow, it's not a major surprise. Light cavalry not in the making for Admiral Yi, so he's confident with his scouts. He does not need light cavalry for now. And there is the first town center and the second town center indeed from Admiral Yi on the stone and on the gold. Actually, he's gonna go for 4 TCs boom with the Castle Age advantage that he does have. Surprising that he's not utilizing the 24-0 military advantage that he is in possession of. And with the crossbows with, having Botkin arrow now, this is going to be very hard to second layer, especially with the scouts also being able to knock down that house very fast. So the thing is that at this point, it's going to be a massive advantage for Admiral Yi in terms of eco, but the main problem for Richard is going to be map control. So even if he drops additional town centers, he basically has 0 map control, which could be concerning in terms of wood numbers because he's running out of the forest here at the back. Castle coming up though for him, and that could mean Mangadize. I would say that Admiral Yi is probably going to do a castle for himself at some time as well. How is he doing with stone count? Yeah, he has 5 on stone and 3 on stone in the bank with 4 town centers available. And gates are also fairly weak, and this is the GG over here from Admiral Yi. Beautifully played from Admiral Yi here, who is probably indeed MBL. Interesting that Richard was this much behind in this one. So, I gotta say, first thing, laming from Admiral Yi, beautifully executed, and it kind of crippled the food eco of Richard. That allowed Admiral Yi to get into war, and after that, even a towering attempt would not achieve anything because you already have an excess eco coming up from Admiral Yi thanks to the fishing ships. So, beautifully played from Admiral Yi. His reactions were so much on point. If there's only one thing I could actually make a critics on is the 4 town centers play instead of something like 3 town centers instead of a forward siege workshop as well alongside your army. When you have this big of a military advantage, 24-0, you might as well add the mangonel so you can start taking down those rams or walls or a battering ram. Whichever works, but I totally understand Richard bailing out this one. He can't stop this push over here. He can add additional walls and more, but he just has nowhere to fall back to anymore. And even this castle will not stave him, because low numbers of mango dies with questionable numbers of upgrades will not stop fairly well upgraded crossbowmen over here. And this means that we will have game number 2 ending here. Admiral Yi is the favored one. Voyager highs were fairly identical, but you can see the KD is much better for Admiral Yi. Eco, definitely better for him, even though not by much, but I think this 400 food eco difference at this stage of the game is actually quite significant. Military numbers are more of a representative. Anyways, give me a second, I will be back really just a second, and we will continue with game number 3. Alright, so we're back, and that means that we are going into game number 3 here, and this is going to be the second home map, I think, of Richard the Lionheart. Indeed, this is going to be Hideout, so we are going in over here, and with that, I welcome you to game number 3 in this best of 7, in between Richard the Lionheart and Admiral Yi Sun-Shin in this Hidden Cup free show match. We're actually taking a deeper look into $200 on the line, 150 goes for the winner, 50 goes for the loser. This is to promote the upcoming Hidden Cup hosted by T90. So, Admiral Yi, 2 games lead here. I have a strong sense that this guy is MBL. On their side, Richard, not having a very strong guess on who this guy could be, to be honest. So far. So, left side for Richard Lionheart, we are going to have Khmer being utilized in blue on Hideout, and we are going to have Britons, a much more conventional civilization for a Hideout-like map. So I'm not surprised on this civilization selection from Admiral Yi, to be honest. In fact, I kind of like it. On the other side of things though, Khmer, somewhat of a head-scratching move, I would say. So, I'm not a major fan of it, to be honest. In fact, we will see what kind of plan he has. Khmer is definitely a good civilization, but I think in early Castle Age, I would give this to Britons. So, for the Britons, if Admiral Yi just goes for fast castle crossbowman play and plays very aggressive, maybe with its forward siege workshop. I don't see how Richard could actually protect his base against that. By the way, luckily for Richard, he has 2 of his boars inside his own fortress. That is actually somewhat uncommon to see, and that makes those borders much easier. Deer on the outside, so he's gonna have to delete some parts of the wall to lure those guys in. And, one thing I'm actually noticing is that he's deleting the walls to push these deer in. He could use the gate theoretically without deleting the walls. Meanwhile, oh man, the boar walks out. That is bad. That is bad. But anyways, sometimes players just use the gates to push into the deer. Well, right now the gates are kind of far away from the deer, so I'm not surprised that we're actually seeing this. But I feel like the wall deletion method is more about those players who prefer to go for sure and not mess around with the sheep. So I did notice that the strongest of all players usually use gates. Anyways, on the other side of things, we will have deer push coming in here as well from Admiral Yi. He does have the deer right next to his gate, so it's much easier for him to push in. That sheep is going to be the one that keeps the gate open. And yeah, other boar is inside. So I would say that Admiral Yi will probably have the better start, but in the long run, I wouldn't actually say that Khmer is a bad idea. Khmer have a very good eco now, and overall, Scorpions could be in the making, even though that's always problematic against Britons, because Briton archers have so significant range that it's just so hard to pick off their archers, so that is the main concern in me regarding Khmer. So we will see how long we get into this game. Khmer do have fully upgraded elite skirmishers, by the way, so that helps them against Britons, but still the range difference is going to be so significant in between those 2 units that Britons might still be okay against that. Anyways, second boar coming in here for Admiral Yi, and with 4 Verges on wood, this is not going to be a scout's play, to no one's surprise. And like I said, seems very reasonable to go for something like fast castle crossbows forward siege workshop type of a play. Now, looking at the map of Richard here, he does have the gold quite exposed, and the secondary gold is also quite exposed. That means that a fast castle crossbow play from Admiral Yi could do severe damage to his eco overall. Stones are also quite exposed here, and that means that protecting the base for Richard is going to be quite tricky. Now, the secondary gold is quite nice over here. This neutral gold is a bit harder to take for him, but honestly, this is probably Richard's neutral gold, and this is the one from Admiral Yi. So if we go super late game, and Richard can actually get this gold and this gold for himself, as it appears that we are actually having some scouts fights here. I think it was Richard who landed the first shot in between these 2 scouts, but it's tough to tell. Nope, I think it's actually Admiral Yi having the advantage in this one. No one knows who has the advantage, but we will have Admiral Yi as the victorious one in this scouts fight. This is actually crucial, because if you take a look at Richard's scouting, he has no idea about his opponent's base. He has no idea about relics. He has no idea about anything. He will not be able to spot if there is a towering attempt coming up for him, which could definitely be reasonable from green, even though it's quite late for it. But he's gonna spot 1 stone. If he would spot the 2nd stone, he might even commit to a towering here. Although, I still prefer Batons, like I said, with a fast castle crossbow play. So, the thing is that green will have all the freedom to explore the map, and only in super late game, when Richard gets this gold, and this gold could be a trouble for Admiral Yi to control gold, because he has 2 secondary stones, but his neutral, or secondary golds, but his neutral gold is quite exposed. Anyways, 2 on gold coming up over here. I think that no one is surprised that we're actually seeing crossbows over here. Meanwhile though, Richard clicking up quite fast. This is still probably going to be a fast castle play with Khmer here, but with Khmer you don't need buildings to click up to castle age. This basically means that you can do 3 Lumberjacks for Khmer. This is the way that you can do a very fast up, and this was probably the plan here from Richard Lionheart. As you can see, normally for Admiral Yi, he has like 6, 7, 8 Verges for fast castle play, because you will need to drop additional buildings in Feudal Age. Meanwhile, for Khmer, you don't need to do that, so you're fine with 3 Verges on food. That saves Verger time, and you can just go for the food. You will see that Richard will do a 23 Verger fast castle here. This is gonna be damn fast. He will click up right after reaching Feudal Age, because he has the resource to do it, and like I said, he does not need any buildings. So this is why he actually picked Khmer over here, not necessarily because of the unit composition. I would have made an argument for picking Khmer here, like I said, just for the eco itself, and overall Khmer is a decent civilization, but the main point for Richard over here appears to be the fact that he can click up to Castle Age insanely fast. Now my problem with this one, you are up to Castle Age, nice. What do you do after? That's my question. So, will you really have a that great advantage from going this fast into Castle Age? Your eco is not going to be super magnificent, 23 villagers is fairly weak, to make a very big push in Castle Age, and without Scout you don't even know where your opponent is, you don't know if he's here, he could be anywhere, so you can't just go like, oh yeah, I'm gonna drop a siege crop here, because you guess what, your opponent is on the other side of the map, of course, so you don't just drop a siege workshop right next to, here, saying that my opponent is here. So yep, as you can see, big advantage for Richard going into Imperial or Castle Age, but like I said, what is the plan? If he goes for a few knights here and he makes a stable for himself, he can do that without a barracks, so that's definitely a possibility. But I feel like, yes, he makes a stable, and so what? He's gonna have unupgraded knights that will never get their way into Admiral Yi's base because Admiral Yi is gonna wall himself off. Interesting that he's building all of his houses along this wall and not adding the barracks over here instead and the blacksmiths over here, so I'm not sure why he's adding like triple layers walls here. That is weird from Admiral Yi. But as you can see, Admiral Yi has also clicked up to Castle Age, so in reality the Castle Age difference in between the two players is going to be about like a minute or minute and a half. And this is just for Khmer Boom. That is the plan for Richard. He's just gonna go for a super fast castle, Khmer Boom. Interesting idea, but I still believe that Britons, even though they are going to be later going into Castle Age, they have cheaper town centers in terms of wood cost, so they will probably be able to drop 2 additional town centers alongside the archers that they're already making. And yet again, I want to express my problem with the fact that Richard does not have any scouts. He doesn't know what's coming his way. This TC is going to go up, that's not a problem. What is going to be a problem is that these archers will probably try to bash their way in through here. And get some villager picks, especially once they're crossbows. Admiral Yi has a good idea on this gold mine, and he has a good idea on this gold mine. So he knows exactly that Richard will probably place a town center over here, indeed escapes the arrow fire, and now he's gonna have the crossbows very soon. Once he gets fetching Botkin arrow and the crossbow upgrade, he's gonna have 8-range crossbows, and that is more than enough to try and bash your way in here, or even better, through this gate. The gate is probably the weakest link in this wall, and with that you could just go for the berry villagers, or you could harass the farmers, but most importantly the gold miners are the ones that are exposed. And if you take a look at this one, in reality what Richard could achieve is 4 villagers lead. Of course that will further grow because Admiral Yi still needs to make additional town centers for himself and he doesn't have the wood for the 3rd one. But yes, you did this just now, but Admiral Yi will already have a siege workshop starting to mango down your base, and you will probably have a bunch of crossbows looping around, like I said, lurking for villager picks. So basically this is a very, very risky approach from Richard, and I'm not sure if the gain is significant enough to justify such an approach. Not a horrible idea, to be honest, to go for a super fast castle with Khmer and then just go for the boom here. My problem, like I said, is that you will be dangerously exposed to any kind of aggression coming up here from your opponent, because against those archers you will need something like a mangonel or so, but still, Briton crossbows with Botkin arrow will be able to go for 8 range, and mangonels just have 7, so you can actually outmark that quite hard. And the score difference is probably because right now Admiral Yi has a major military advantage, as he's going to be just rolling with 2 town centers. I still believe that this is okay for him, because he's behind by 12 villagers, that's something, but he will force a lot of idle time on the villagers of Richard, especially considering that Richard was rushing up so hard into Castle Age, he didn't do Loom. Now he's gonna go Loom, so before these crossbows actually reach their target, Loom will be there for Richard, but still, my concern with this one is that right now Richard is completely defenseless. So sure, you will have 3 town centers booming, but it doesn't matter if you have 20 idols, and you will see villagers getting picked off left and right over here. And there is not a lot of spaces to wall back to be honest. Like, there's already a siege workshop over here for Admiral Yi, a monastery to pick up the relics over here, which is gonna give a decent boost to your economy, and there is the Khmer Scorpions as the answer, but with a mangonel available for Admiral Yi already, I would actually think that mangonel will probably be able to address this issue. For now, Richard is holding quite nicely, and he has now a 16 villagers lead, which is quite significant, if you consider that Admiral Yi is also going 2 town centers. So I would say that if Richard can actually hold on to this one now, he could have a very good boom and might actually be faster into Imperial. With 5 villagers committed towards Stone, which is actually 6, this is going to be defensive castle over here for Richard at some time. And what could be the plan? I would love to see something like Ballista Elephants chopping their ways through and then sending in a bunch of knights into Admiral Yi's eco. So this is going to be the typical scenario of I have boom, I have army. So if Admiral Yi can do enough damage to Richard here, Richard is going to be GG. However, I'm not exactly certain if Admiral Yi will be able to do enough damage, especially with the Khmer Scorpions. Look at that. That's 1x range on the Scorpions, and this might be the idea behind picking Khmer, I think the second half of the idea. The Khmer team bonus gives 1x range to Scorpions, and that is one of the rare Feudal or Castle Age units that can actually have eco range to even Botkin Arrow Britain Crossbows, because Botkin Arrow Britain Crossbows will be 8 range, and Scorpions here will be 8 range as well. So maybe Richard thought, hey, my opponent is going to pick Britons, so I'm gonna pick Khmer for a very good fast castle boom and just a Scorpion defense that allows me to snap down their crossbows from a equal distance compared to the crossbows range. So the DC still stands, and like I said, now Richard has 21 villagers lead. I'm starting to like Richard's approach more and more, as double stables will be added over here to pop out a few knights as well. There is a monk for Admiral Yi, so this is not going to be as easy as it sounds, and oops, that's a nice one. And so far, Richard's defense is absolutely perfect. Admiral Yi might be in the danger of losing another mango over here. Scorpion trying to snap down the monk before the knights of Richard could actually engage. And meanwhile, Richard losing that mango on the front line. For now, though, his eco seems to be quite decent, so his food income is actually magnificent. If he could allocate a few more villagers to gold, this would be quite decent, but he's focusing on stone for himself, so I would say that something like delete farm here and make a castle could really be something for him. He will soon need to start repairing that town center, though. There is going to be a 1 for nothing trade, and that's going to be maybe another pick here from Richard, but nope. He's gonna end up losing his own mangonel here for no gain. So basically this whole fight ends up being a 1 for 1 trade. But multiple stables coming up here from Richard. He's starting with knights, but I have a feeling he was switching to elephants at some time and just wants to go for the traditional Khmer boom into mass elephants. Maybe even use a ballista elephant to cut down the trees. That would be a very interesting approach. To cut down the trees and then just send something like 10-15 elephants into your opponent's eco, because Admiral Yi's military production is mostly here on the front line. There's more and more knights coming in to intercept the mangoes that are defending the base of Richard. Now Admiral Yi is also going to be on 3 town centers, so he will not fall behind in villager counts anymore. 18 villagers advantage right now for Richard, and I still believe that I'm starting to like Admiral Yi's position a lot more here. The problem is that I'm not sure how long he's going to be able to hold this position right now. Sure, there's a monk that converts a knight. Oh, this is bad from Admiral Yi, though. Oh, man. Oh, man, that was horrible. That was just absolutely horrible. Getting one of our knights converted and then losing the mangonel to the converted knight. Now, however, there is going to be the knights moving inside. I think Richard will just jump into the TC. That it's a beautifully executed move, but right now, Richard is just getting constant punishing on that TC. More importantly, like I said, you have 17 villagers lead, but 13 of them are completely idle, and that means that basically you will have very little chance of having a better eco than your opponent does. Anyways, that is going to be a 1 for nothing trade. Admiral Yi nice with the moves of the mango, and he's gonna send in the villagers to repair that one. So basically, having this many idols for Richard definitely hurts him in the long run, because, well, as I said, for Richard, he wants to boom. He's gonna have 4 town centers, and if he can't actually utilize his villager advantage, this is gonna be for nothing. Light cavalry could be a decent idea here for Rich, trying to snipe down those mangonels or the monks, but you still have a bunch of crossbows that deny you from doing that. No botkin arrow still. Okay, now arriving is the botkin arrow. It just arrived like 1 second before. Anyways, Richard's starting to have a fairly good boom here, 90 villagers, and this could be just enough to click up into Imperial and start massing. Massing what, though? That is my question all the time. Like, what's your composition like? Are you just gonna go for like a Scorpion spam or what? I like this TC dub, by the way, from Richard. So even if he loses this one, which would already be an awful scenario for him, he would still have gold at the back over here. So that is the main concern right now for him. Khmer farming is quite nice, and that is going to be a beautiful mango shot coming up here from Richard. But gold control could be a major concern for Richard. If he loses this town center, he still has this one, but like I said, it's a bit concerning. Anyways, his lead is growing bigger and bigger with 20 Verges advantage now. Still 3 town centers only from Admiral Yi. And what's even more important to notice, Richard, he's mining stone very heavily. There is the defensive castle. I was like, why did he not make a defensive castle just now? Because he already had a lot of villagers on stone and a lot of stone income, and this TC, this TC is gonna be able to protect the villagers quite nicely. The castle will go up and the knights are finally flooding out. It could be Khmer knights, which are actually quite decent, so that might just be the whole plan. Outboom your opponent and go for Khmer knights super fast. So Khmer knights do have all blacksmith upgrades, and you also get the cavalier upgrade, so it's fully upgraded Khmer cavalier with a great food eco. This is the plan. Normally I wouldn't say I like a Khmer Cavalier type of an approach against Britons, because Britons do have the good hobs and do have decent archers to start off with. But when you have this big eco lead, you might actually end up being able to push very, very heavily. And you can tell that Richard is very close to clicking up into Imperial Age. Meanwhile, same is going to be there for Admiral E, as there is going to be a defensive castle coming up on the gold mine, meaning that these light cavalry and knights will not be able to inflict any further damage. Players chopping closer and closer to each other, as Admiral Yi is gonna stonewall the southern part of the map to make sure that there's gonna be no raid coming from that direction. And for now, there is gonna be the castle up for Rich. What is the plan? I don't like the approach of sending out villagers over here on the outside for lumberjacking. Like, of course, it doesn't have a lot of great surfaces to hit the wood line in the middle of it, because like this is blocked off, so it's not a horrible spot, but it's a bit concerning because your opponent does have some knights around, as sure, the castle is gonna protect your villagers, but it's not a whole lot. Nice quick was there from Admiral Yi, protecting his villagers, building the town center. Castle Age times were in the favor of Richard, but Imperial Age times will be just slightly in his favor, as this TC will also go up. 4 town centers will be there, but a 22 villagers advantage is quite significant for Richard Lionheart right now over here. And I do assume this is gonna be sneaky villagers. Might work well, because there is one villager constructing it. This will get picked off by Richard, and that is exactly what you need if you are Admiral, or what is that, Richard, because probably what you want to do now is either Wolof over here. This is more than aggressive, damn. Very ambitious walls, I gotta say, from Richard. I actually thought he's gonna sneak villagers in the corner and start making some knights in there, but anyways, pikemen already in the making for Admiral Yi, and this is why I don't like this cavalier's approach yet. Sure, you have your greater eco, but it's like 18 villagers lead, but your opponent will still have an army that will just beat down yours. So I would say that if Admiral Yi is able to get pikemen here, he's gonna be okay. But I feel like Richard will want to go with a heavy emphasis on scorpions, because, well, he's Khmer. Indeed, there's the scorpions, so the plan is basically Cavalier Scorpion here. There's gonna be a castle coming up on this hill. Mass Scorpion and Cavalier is gonna be the plan. It's actually harder now for Britons, though, to fight against that. But I guess with Arbalest, they can still snap down Scorpions from a distance. But stopping a Scorpion that lob is damn tough. So I would think that Richard's plan might work, but he needs to mass a lot of Scorpions for this one. He needs the double crossbow upgrade for that. He needs the heavy Scorpion upgrade. Where can I read all the players who have qualified for Hidden Cup? If you make like, probably AoE Zone is your best bet for reading all the players, because there's invited players for the qualifiers. So if you're just interested in the 8 players who qualified in the qualifiers and not the invited ones, then you will probably be fine with the ! Brackets command, and there is the Hidden Cup free qualifier brackets you can check for the 8 players that did not get invited but did qualify. All the competing ones, probably AoEzone.net. There is a post for Hidden Cup, and that is the 16 players available. We'll probably take a deep look at that, as we are getting a fight over here. Pikemen, not enough numbers right now, and these appear to be hussars for Richard instead of going for cavalier here. There's a lot of arbalest for Admiral Yi, and he already has 10 range on those, and this is why I said that in small quantities this knight plus light cav plus scorpion approach will not really work. This is my problem with this one. 8 range as opposed to 10. Those orbs will snipe them down from million ranges. Nope, I think green is probably MBL. This is my guess on this one. No idea on blue, but I'm starting to feel like it could be someone like ACCM. I think he did qualify. I'll have to check the qualifiers myself because I don't remember who did qualify. But for now, as Halberdier does arrive for Admiral Yi, he's gonna be having a very good composition against what Richard wants to do, and that is gonna be Yeoman if I'm not mistaken. Yeoman or Warwolf? I always confuse the colors of the technologies. So, Warwolf. That is also an interesting idea because I would think that Yeoman, I'm not sure if he has Yeoman already, but if he does not, then that would be better probably to start off with. I'm not sure if he has conscription either. Warwolf will be very good for the trap wars though, so I'm gonna say that killing those traps with Warwolf is gonna be very easy, and oh boy, the Scorpions are moving in. This is like a deathmatch, like a unit composition here for the Khmer player, but as long as you don't have technologies like double crossbow, heavy Scorpion, you will not be able to engage this one, and Britons are a very good defensive civilization with Warwolf. As you can see, Warwolf traps will just absolutely annihilate everything that Admiral Yi has over here. Wait, no, Admiral Yi is the one with the Warwolf traps, then he's gonna be the one who destroys Richard, and is it enough villagers to repair against this one? Nope, but it doesn't really matter because, like I said, Admiral Yi will be able to destroy that trap, and that means that now it's gonna be a major advantage for the Britons here. Still, what is concerning for Admiral Yi a tiny bit is that his south is wide open and there is stables being rushed up in his face. A light cavalry getting into his eco would be an absolute disaster. But for now, it is really just Richard piling up a bunch of hussars, and he wants to go for Scorpions. Still missing a bunch of upgrades, and the Rams are in the making as well. So it's Rams, Scorpions, and light cavalry, but I don't know. I don't think that this is supposed to work against Britons. Britons do have so good range on their arbs that they can just snap down so many Scorpions from a distance, so the cost efficiency will definitely be on the side of Britons. Siege Rams is definitely something that Britons do struggle against, but I don't think that Siege Rams alone will help you, especially if your opponent does have that many Halberdiers. Of course, like I said, these Scorpions will be okay pushing away the Halberdiers for now, but Hubs will get more upgrades as well. Warwolf traps will slowly take down these buildings, and this is like gonna be one big death blob for Richard. This is all about that. He's gonna go for Siege Engineers right now. I think he's still missing double crossbow, still missing heavy Scorpion, but realistically speaking, he has like one shot to actually do damage to Admiral Yi here. Halberdiers will clean this up on the south alongside a siege workshop that will probably pop out a ram and destroy the buildings there. And like I said, Scorpions are nice over here, and they are actually shredding through the ranks of the Halberdiers, but once the Arbalests get into range, they will just absolutely tear them apart, and the cost efficiency is just much better here for the Briton player. The idea is not horrible, and I think that having the Khmer over here was probably a counter pick for what Admiral Yi was actually planning, so I'm fairly certain that Richard probably knew that there is going to be Britons and he wanted to counterpick that with Khmer. But yeah, Warwolf traps also have a real damage in case you have noticed, so they will be excellent at taking down a lot of those blobbed up Scorpions. You can tell that most of the Scorpions are already dying. Siege Rams getting their way through those trebuchets. This is going to be the crucial fight. Like I said, one big blob of death here for Richard, but if he loses this one, this is going to be a disaster for him. And with increasing amounts of Halberdiers, I feel like Admiral Yi is going to be able to hold against this one, because he's just facing 3 Scorpions here, and the Halberdiers will start to clean up the rest. Meanwhile, down south, it appears that the siege workshop is up, indeed, Cap Dram on the way for Admiral Yi, and he's going to clean this up. There is some ranges, but this is more about just an annoyance for Admiral Yi and not necessarily a threat. For now, though, there's more and more Scorpions coming in for Richard. I think... What's up with Admiral Yi? He does have population space for such units, and his eco is quite decent as well. I just don't know why he doesn't have that many units out on the field. He's floating a lot of wood and gold. I think this is a production-based issue here for Admiral Yi. He might not have the buildings for it, but yeah, this is everything but cost-efficient here for Richard. And that means that slowly but surely Admiral Yi is going to push the north, and all Admiral Yi needs is to clean up the south here. Now, he's getting raided quite hard, so this is going to be a bit tougher to clean up than he actually thought it would. So cleaning up those villages would be very important right now for Admiral Yi. If he cleans up those wheels, I would think that he's gonna be the one who does have a massive, massive lead. No towers in the middle coming from either player. That could be one way to harass your opponent, as I do see a lead skirmisher in the making for Richard. That's a good answer to the halberdiers we're actually seeing here. But once you lose those stables, the rams themselves will be able to just bash down all of those buildings, because there's just nothing that can actually kill those rams. Skirmishers will never kill rams here. So now, Admiral, now that he has decent production, he's gonna be at pop cap. Meanwhile, for Richard, who does have a slight score lead, he's not at pop cap right now. And there is the tower I was referencing to. This is gonna be a further annoyance for Admiral Yi, especially considering that Admiral Yi is also getting raided over here, so he can't just go for the wood down over here. He will probably have to move some around over here to get that. Anyways, skirmishers in the party with fairly decent upgrades, but halberdiers are slowly cleaning this up, and rams. Like I said, all you need to do is clean up these stables and you are more than happy with it. And I just don't like this. I just don't like this from Richard. Like, he has a lot of scorpions in this one, but with against so many halberdiers and werewolf traps, this is not supposed to work, because werewolf traps can also land some beautiful shots on your scorpions. There is the light cavalry flooding outside. Scorpions. Oh, you gotta task your traps on the scorpions now, because that is gonna be the real damage dealer here for the army of Richard, and it's not enough. You will just need the traps to finish off those heavy scorpions, and you are more than happy to leave, I think. Meanwhile, Admiral Yi is solidifying his control over this area as well. 4 traps for Richard, but when you have Werewolf, the Briton traps will always be superior, and like I said, even though it was a bit of a headache here for Admiral Yi, he appears to be able to clean this aggression up. There's still more stables coming up, but like I said, this is all about taking down the stables, and then you will be able to go for the Rams push here. Still, it's concerning that Admiral Yi is not actually putting on any emphasis on trying to wall this off, for example, so that Richard cannot push any further in here. And Trap Wars coming up here, but with Werewolf, that's also much easier. Oh man. Werewolf is just much easier. Corner base, max confirmed. I'm not saying it's impossible to be max, to be honest, but I wouldn't be sure about that either. Anyways, traps will go down here for Richard, and I still don't see how Richard would be able to push this one here on the north. His best bet is to raid the eco of his opponent down to hell, but this is not going to happen with light cavalry here as well. Britain light cavalry is not impressive, but as you can see, they are actually having +4/+4. So at least it's not super horrible, even though it's definitely a bottom tier light cavalry we're talking about, compared to fully upgraded Khmer Hussars. But this is going to be a cleanup here from Admiral Yi, and once he's able to do that, he can actually send out units into the eco of Richard. He just bashes that wall down with rams. However, finally, Admiral Yi is pushing, or getting pushed here in north. That blob of Skirmer's corpse starts to work out quite well here for Richard. He still needs some siege to follow this up, because he needs to take down this castle. And like I said, one thing that could be a problem for Admiral Yi is gold control. This is the neutral gold pile that is supposed to be in the hands of Richard, and this is the other neutral gold pile. So I'm not even sure if Admiral Yi has a lot of gold left. I think this is all the gold that is left for Admiral Yi, and that could be a big concern, because now we are actually talking about skirmishers and halberdiers. Relic numbers 3 for Richard and 2 for Admiral Yi. Richard is climbing back in this game. I did not like his initial composition, and I still don't like it. The main problem for Admiral Yi, though, is that first, he's getting raided, he just cleaned this up. But more importantly, the gold positions are quite bad for Richard or Admiral Yi here. That means that Admiral Yi will run out of gold much faster than what is the case for Richard Lionheart. So that means that more gold units are available for Richard. I also loved how he was using Hussars from early stage of the game, so he also has more gold stockpiled in. So cost efficiency was definitely on the side of Richard in the long run. And once you don't have anything to deal with those scorpions, this is gonna be a tough matchup. So if you have a dead blob of like 20 scorpions, those halberdiers will die so hard. Look at that. Khmer scorpions on hill were yep, absolutely. Khmer scorpions on this hill would be absolutely amazing. Still, Britons do have 11 range on these guys, so they could just snap down scorpions from a distance. But siege rams and scorpions definitely something that Britons do not like to fight against. And you will constantly have to micro back. This is the problem here. Admiral Yi could just snap down scorpions all day, all night, but he constantly needs to micro this back. He's also facing a bunch of skirmishers, which do have lower range than his orbs, but it's still a nuisance. And you can see that Admiral Yi is making a bunch of stables. This is a problem for him because, well, you know, Britain light cavalry is still bottom tier. Like I said, there is going to be raids coming up from Admiral Yi on the south. This is what I was referencing to. So you can start raiding the eco of your opponent from here. But I feel like defensive castles from Richard will be more than enough to hold off Admiral Yi here. And now it's going to be the big death blob moving forward. You just need the traps to trap down those castles, or the siege rams, both works. But there is finally the traps coming in here, and Richard is coming back into this one. His tower over here is also very, very nice. Would love to see a tower over here as well. In fact, if you think about the fact that Admiral Yi's control over here in the south is not magnificent, and in the north he's also losing ground, if you drop a tower over here, Admiral Yi might actually have trouble getting a lot of wood for himself. Traps up on this hill over here, they will be firing down hills. Britons will still be good at holding this one because, well, there is going to be a Warwolf available for Britons here, so this is still a tough matchup for Richard to push. So this is the main reason why I would personally love something like siege rams instead of traps a bit more, because as you can see, there's basically no chance for Richard to actually win this trap war against the Warwolf traps. Meanwhile, so raids coming out down south from Admiral Yi. He's moving forward with capped rams. Wolves coming in here indeed for Rich, and this is gonna hold for some time, but question is, who's gonna get to the opponent's eco faster? There is a big train of siege rams on the way available for Richard, and this is, like I said, a big dead blob of Khmer scorpions and rams alongside a bunch of hussars. And if you are Admiral Yi, what do you do against this one? It's damn tough. Maybe you can land some good Warwolf trap shots on those scorpions, but really you just need to start this death blob. Still, I would love to see Ballistus Elephant cut and light cavalry into the eco, and I feel like that is initially the plan of Admiral Yi. Of course, he doesn't have Ballista Elephants because he's Britons, but I think he might consider going Onager. That's a lot of investment in terms of gold, and he's out of gold. But he might be like, okay, I can't win this normally, so I'm just gonna try to Onager cut my way into my opponent's base. He does have Guard Tower available as well for him, so he's picking off villagers over here from Richard, and just try to send his light cavalry into the eco of Richard. Big fight coming up over here. A lot of those scorpions go down to the Warwolf traps, but basically the entire army of Admiral Yi is getting annihilated here on the north. Most of his army is now down south. There's still a bunch of arbalests alive, but there's nothing stopping the train of rams. And yeah, I totally agree. If you Onager cut, that has to win the game because you don't have any other kind of gold, and you also invest a lot into something that is not defending here in the north. In fact, this is still very tough for you to handle. There is some capped rams in the counterattack, but I feel like Richard with the light cavalry will just be much better at holding in this one. And this castle is going to be so crucial right now. Light cavs popping out at the right time here for Admiral Yi, and he's sniping down a lot of those defenseless scorpions. All of those traps are going down, and it appears that Admiral Yi might be able to hold this castle. The villagers running into repair, and this castle will indeed hold. So Richard is still in this one, but he's gonna lose his aggression here in the middle, and that is indeed a mangonel. So I am 90% sure that this is going for an Onager cut over here in the middle, and try to send the light cavalry inside. Still, like I said, Admiral Yi is holding, and I think soon Richard will also run out of gold. In fact, 8 gold miners he has is all on this style of gold. Richard has 3 relics compared to just 2 from Admiral Yi, so the relic advantage is also on the side of Admiral Yi in this matchup, and that is gonna help him out in the long run quite a bit. In terms of trash, by the way, Britain trash is actually quite okay. So if you take a look at their Harbidiers, it's fully upgraded. I think their skirmishers are fully upgraded as well. Yeah, the skirmishers will be fully upgraded as well, but their light cavalry is quite bad, so yeah, that's a deficit. On the other side, the Khmer do have fully upgraded hussars available to him. They are missing the final armor upgrade for their halberdiers, but aside from that, they have all the trash upgrades that they need. So Khmer trash is basically top tier, missing just only 1 upgrade. Meanwhile, for Britons, light cavalry is going to be a cause of concern. And with Richard pushing down south, like I said, you will need to chop wood. Where do you even chop wood if you are Admiral Yi? That's the problem. Look at that. You can't chop here. Like, you can't chop here because it's getting harassed. You are chopping trees on the right side. So right now, Admiral Yi, as surprising as it sounds on Hideout, we are talking about Admiral Yi not being able to access a lot of wood for himself. So, there is the Onagers coming in though, but this is early. This is too early, damn. So the problem with this one, and this is always something I say with the onager cuts, is that you need to get the cavalry ready when you cut, because if you cut and you don't have anything to send through, your opponent has time to react. Meanwhile, a somewhat disadvantageous engagement over here for Richard, as he's just rushing a lot of hussars into halberdiers. Indeed, oh man, that was a lot of hussars just dying. Not enough scorpions to deal with all those halberdiers. The next chain of rams coming in here. All the stables are down, though, and the rams are still alive. There is at least a few rams alive. Meanwhile, though, chop in the middle does happen. Still a layer of trees separating Admiral Yi from being able to access Richard's eco. Richard's eco is wide open, and there's not a lot of things that would actually protect it. First light cavalry goes through the hole in the middle right now. And meanwhile, some light cavalry from Admiral Yi is also cleaning up the skirms here down south. Still, it is impossible for Richard to break this defense over here. Very good defensive plays here from Admiral Yi. He's gonna move the traps forward and start to trap down this trebuchet from his opponent. With Warwolf, that shouldn't be a big issue. And like I said, wood control could also be an issue for Richard here, because his wood lines will be dangerously exposed to light cavalry raids. The problem, though, that the hole works both ways. Apparently, we will have a wall-off coming up here from Richard very fast, but further onager cuts can work. The problem is that, like I said, cavalry is better for Richard over here, and the hole works both ways. So if Admiral Yi is unable to do enough damage within the base of his opponent, it is going to be Richard who will spam light cavalry into the base of Admiral Yi here. And slowly but surely this castle is going down. The arbalests are garrisoned inside, and this trap is still standing, and that is the one that's taking out that castle very slowly. 60 stone left in the bank for Admiral Yi for repairs. With 3 villagers, that is nearly impossible to repair against the trap and the siege ram bashing it down. The castle here is going to fall, and I don't see the breakthrough coming for Admiral Yi in the middle. Like, sure, he's rushing in a few light cavalry, and he has managed to knock down Richard down to 105 villagers, but in the other side of things, though, now it's going to be the northern side of the map lost for Admiral Yi. And meanwhile, like I said, holes work both ways. This is the time for Richard to just send in all of those light cavalry into the eco of his opponent, pick off those 2 onagers. That would be a very juicy pick off. You know that your opponent doesn't have a lot of gold left, so if you can kill 2 onagers, that's a perfect value for your light cavalry. Indeed, there is 2 onagers going down, and this could just be one of my signature quotes. Holes work both ways. If you chop in the middle and you don't win the game with it, you might actually risk losing it. And now Admiral Yi is dropping in villager counts as well. Massive amounts of idols available as well for him. And Richard also has 3 relics. He does have better light cavalry in this one. Still, though, he couldn't pierce through in the middle. Or he could get through light cavalry, but he's kind of stopped pushing forward in the north. In fact, Admiral Yi is still pushing back this aggression. 3 relics against 2 is going to be a major advantage, though, in the long run. And still, wood control is going to be a concern for Admiral Yi. So he doesn't have a lot of wood to work with, but Warwolf traps is a big advantage in any kind of trap wars. You like holes? This is a family-friendly stream, but in Age of Empires terms, definitely. Other terms, it's not a discussion for a stream like that, right? Anyways, those siege rams will be a costly loss here for Richard. And that means that we are gonna have a counterattack coming up here from Admiral Yi, and I don't see Richard stopping this one anytime soon. There is a bunch of traps setting up, and for the first time in like the like the last 20-ish minutes, I would say Admiral Yi again has the advantage. He's just playing out of his mind. Military advantage on his side. His base is still wide open, so Richard could just continue spamming in units through that. It's very cute to see some archers here in late Imperial Age with Khmer against Britons. I'm super happy to see those. Look at that. Obviously a wrong hotkey there from Richard. But still, the main concern with Khmer here, I think, is that you don't have an answer to those Warwolf traps. You can't win trap wars against these guys, and Admiral Yi is doing a magnificent job of sniping down any kind of ram, and look at that. Admiral Yi pushing this back, almost double the military right now, and if he pushes through here in the middle with a few rams, he's gonna start sending in halberdiers. Halberdiers might even be a better answer to this, to be honest, because Richard will probably react with hussars being moved to the middle, as there's still gonna be some harassment being done here on Admiral Yi's wood lines. But still, the direct engagements are something that Richard are losing constantly. You can't blame him for not having enough production, to be honest, here. But Halberdiers, these arbs being alive are just so important, by the way. They have an insane damage output against those light cavalry. So, yeah, keeping these arbs alive is a very nice job from Admiral Yi, and indeed Halberdiers coming in. And you have to address Halberdiers with skirmishers, most likely. That is a slower process, because skirmishers move slower, so reaction is gonna be slower as well. And, well, destroying the lumber camps is not the #1 thing you want to do here, but still, some harassment is done in the eco of Richard. This is a very slow and grindy game. Still a lot of skirmishers here from Richard, but the problem is that he's just going pure skirms. Even Werewolf traps will be able to get some decent shots on those, but more importantly, it's gonna be about the Briton light cavalry, the heroes of the game. He doesn't need a mill because he's Khmer. No, this is because this was the original spot of the wood line. He just chopped down. So, this is not an accident, that is intentional. First, like I said, you don't need mill for Khmer. Second, that was the previous position of a lumber camp when it was actually considered efficient. Anyways, slowly but surely, Admiral Yi is grinding forward here. You do have a breakthrough coming in here for Richard though, so he could send in a few raiding units here all the way through. But this applies for Admiral Yi as well. Admiral Yi sending in more light cavalry, but guess what? They are just like, oh yeah, hoes work both ways. Richard sending in the hussars into the eco of Admiral Yi here, and Admiral Yi sending in the light cavalry. Oh no, this is just pathfinding. So basically Admiral Yi is queuing up light cavalry on all these stables, and he's tasking on them over here. But the shortest path right now is not all the way through where his military is supposed to be moving. It's through the map, so they are just actually running through the middle to get into this engagement. These traps are paying for their price so well. I wish we had capture rate to see the exact statistics about the damage that has been dealt by them. But indeed, this is the time when Richard is finally adding Hobbs in this one. Definitely something that was needed in here, especially considering that Admiral Yi doesn't have a lot of skirmishers to fight against that, so it's a late addition of the Halberdiers. Khmer Halberdiers are quite nice, but they're missing +4 armor, which could be a concern against skirmishers, and this is the strength of the Werewolf traps. You can just land some good shots on skirmishers as well. Look at that. Few well-placed shots, but oh boy, the traps are in danger, as Admiral Yi is getting pushed back quite hard over here. He is just running through more light cavalry here in the middle, but with the Halberdiers arriving for Richard, he's just tearing apart all of those fairly poor Briton light cavalry, because no bloodlines here, and no... What is that? No bloodlines and no hussar upgrade for Britons. Meanwhile, these are fully upgraded hussars, fully upgraded elite skirmishers, and there is just extra armor missing in Imperial Age for the Halberdiers of Khmer here with their trash hand. It's another swing back, so one of the best games that I've ever seen so far in this tournament, including all of the qualifiers. Definitely a back and forth game we're actually witnessing over here. In between these two excellent players, the way into either player's base is still wide open, so whichever player does prefer, he could try to raid the eco of the opponent, but both players have expanded to the corners a bit more, so their eco is fairly safe. Luckily for Richard, he doesn't need to place mills, so his farming eco is more than perfect. You can see that food income really trickling in with the Khmer farming. That is just a magnificent sight to see. Anyways, still, Richard has 3 relics at his disposal and just 2 for Admiral Yi. And I think Admiral Yi will also need his skirmishers against the Halberdiers of Rich, otherwise this will not work very well. So, yeah, as long as you just have light cavalry and Halberdiers, Halberdier skirm seems like a better composition right now for Rich, especially considering he has hussars. He can also mix in very soon. These traps are still holding the ground over here, and the problem for Reach is that he doesn't have any kind of follow-up siege that he could utilize to take down buildings. So he could kill military, but taking down buildings is a different thing. Werewolf traps, again, paying for their price here, landing some shots on those skirmishers. It's even better if you can pick off a scorpion like that, but for now that doesn't appear to be the case. But, like I said, open bases for each player, and Admiral Yi dropping down to 108 Verges now. There is going to be a lot of raiding done, and in terms of raiding capabilities, Khmer is definitely the better late game scenario. However, there is going to be the Scorpions going out on the light cavalry. Still, these Arbs are alive, and they are just perfect at sniping down all of those Halberdiers, but now Admiral Yi has dropped down to 104 Verges compared to 126, both players at around 20 idols. And it appears that this is going to be the grand plan for Richard. He wants to push in the middle and just spam Medici into his opponent's eco. This guard tower is still standing, but with a siege tower in the middle, this is not necessarily something that Admiral Yi will be able to stop. Surprisingly, Admiral Yi has 5,000 extra score, with basically identical eco numbers, identical KDs, and more relics for Richard, so I'm not sure why the score is that low for Richard or that high for Admiral Yi. But anyways, this tower going down is quite crucial, and it appears that it is going to be Admiral Yi getting his middle push now with rams, light cavalry, and skirmishers. It's just a mixture of full trash here from Khmer, and the Khmer pick seems to pay out now for Richard. Of course, he benefited heavily from having better gold spawns overall compared to Admiral Yi for late game scenarios, but I still believe that this was an exceptional play from Rich, and he's gonna knock down those siege workshops, buildings more and more. And let's see Admiral Yi's villager count, 106, but this is gonna decrease quite a bit now that there's a big raiding going down on the farming eco. 46 villagers only for Admiral Yi, by the way, on food. Meanwhile, on the other side, it's 78 Khmer farmers getting their food all the way into the Khmer Empire, and Richard is getting closer and closer to taking this one. He has fully upgraded skirms, fully upgraded light cavalry in this one, and you don't really have an answer to stop the siege ramp. This is where we end up with Britons here again, I guess. So, TC is going down over here. There's still a lot of spaces to fall back to for Admiral Yi, and once, well, since he has 112 villagers still alive, this is not the end of the world for him, but this is getting worse and worse as the minute as each minute progresses, basically. So I would say that the advantage is now definitely in the favor of Richard here. So with that, there is still a hope for Admiral Yi, but it's just fading away slowly. Britain trash is not horrible, but it's not exceptionally good. So that's the problem with that one. Like, you are probably perfectly fine in most cases, but not against a civilization that has excellent trash, like Khmer. So this is why I'm saying that, well, this might be in the hands of the Khmer player. Not a lot of anti-cavalry units over here though for Richard, and that could mean that these light cavalry could just clean up all of these skirms very, very hard, as the Trebs are just trapping down lumber camps here. By the way, wood control could be an issue very soon for the players. As you can see, Richard is chopping down wood over here, and where is Admiral Yi chopping wood? He's chopping wood in the north, and this is the moment when Richard switches all of his Hussar raids on the north, and another bunch of villagers will go down to Admiral Yi for a quite long time in this game. Now is the first time he's dropping below 100 villagers. His eco is steadily getting worse and worse. He just doesn't have the safe wood access right now. There's traps in the middle still though, so it's basically a small dead blob of Britons here in the middle that can start trapping down buildings and opening up the way for halberdiers and skirmishers to get into the eco. But definitely 89 villagers now for Admiral Yi is definitely not impressive, and I see fortified wall coming up for Admiral Yi. For what? What's the plan with Admiral Yi on the fortified wall? He wants the wall of the middle, that's the plan, and wants to fight directly on the north. What a play, what a game this is overall. It just, look at the queues here for Richard. He's just spamming units all day, all night. And in the spam wars, this is gonna be something that Admiral Yi will not be super good in. He doesn't have the eco to continuously spam as good as what Richard can actually achieve here. And I don't see additional villagers queued up here from Admiral Yi either. That is what is really concerning for me in this matchup. So the thing is that 30 villagers deficit, which is actually 40 villagers deficit, and you don't have any more villagers queued up, so you will stick with this deficit, and as long as your opponent has a better eco than you, he will just outmuscle you in terms of military numbers. But anyways, next blob of rams arriving over here. No skirmishers to kill the pikemen though, and that means that the pikemen can probably pick off one or two siege rams over here. Meanwhile, down south there is just one lonely hussar walking through. I wonder if Admiral Yi knows that there is a hole in between the wood line and that fortified wall. Meanwhile, this could be a cost loss here for Admiral Yi if he does not know is that the scorpions, the skirmishers are sniping down his traps. But yet again, it is Admiral Yi pushing forward. Excellent game. This is really the first game when I'm not saying that Admiral Yi is having a major advantage. In fact, this is so back and forth. And something I did point out in multiple tournaments before. when you have this long game, losing it could definitely cripple your entire morale. It is extremely exhausting, but you can see that these two players are very even in their level in this game. And slowly but surely, Admiral Yi is just trapping down the middle. There is still a chance that he's just gonna delete that wall and send some units inside the base of Richard, so there is still a chance for raiding. Raiding coming in though in the north as well from Richard, from a few hussars. Halberdiers will struggle to catch up with those guys, but will be quick finishing them off once they get into distance. And still, the military composition here on the north seems to be somewhat better for Richard, but he's just unable to make the finishing moves to this game. And this is still wide open. Admiral Yi with 5,000 score lead, but he's now adding a few villagers. I don't think that he has a lot of town centers actually. He's gonna be like 2-3 town centers, just adding a few villagers on those. Yeah, they are absolutely enjoying this one. This is one of the better games of Age of Empires, so players do enjoy such grindy, fast games, especially if they win. If they win, they're gonna be super happy that they have won a very competitive, very close series like this one, to be honest. Anyways, again, it's gonna be Admiral Yi pushing on the north, and it's just so back and forth right now. Rams in the middle though, so basically the recipe is quite simple. If Admiral Yi pushes on the north, Richard is gonna push in the middle. If Admiral Yi pushes the middle, Richard is gonna push on the north. So as you can see, now it's gonna be halberdiers coming in here. Not enough skirmishers to deal with those halberdiers, so this is gonna be a bad fight for Richard. Oh man, this is a very bad fight for Richard. There's 2 scorpions though, and the scorpions could make a quick work of all of those halberdiers, but you have lost most of your cavalry units. And meanwhile, it's gonna be a push from Richard yet again. Wolf traps finishing off the siege workshops over here. And this is just absolute madness right now. But light cav finally in larger quantities up here for Richard. I love this light cavalry bashing down this stone wall, by the way, from Admiral Yi. So now it's gonna be a lot of light cavalry inside the base here, but yet again the problem is that these skirmishers, these scorpions, these rams are exposed to light cavalry fire, so a lot of gold is lost in this one. But I feel like this is all about Richard just spamming a few light cavalry to the back of Admiral Yi's base. Admiral Yi, like I said, has a worse eco. He does have a slight KD advantage, and that helps him out a tiny bit, but it appears that if Admiral Yi cannot actually solidify his villager numbers, go up to something like 110 or so, or at least 100, I think that slowly but surely Richard will be able to outmass him in terms of military, but for now it doesn't appear to be the case. Admiral Yi is playing out of his mind. That was just absolutely amazing, and yet again, rams and skirmishers completely exposed to light cavalry. This is going to be an awful lot of gold lost over here in the form of rams and scorpions, alongside halberdiers, and now Admiral Yi will have the chance to push back in the middle, sniping down a lot of siegecraft from his opponent. And as always, if Admiral Yi pushes in the middle, it's gonna be a Richard pushing on the north. If there is someone out there who doesn't like hideout, the reason why they don't like hideout is exactly because of this. If this was actually team games, this would be even more crazy, because then you would actually have trade as well, so that could drag out games even further. Anyways, on the north is gonna be Richard pushing, but I don't see any kind of siege weaponry that is able to take down buildings yet again, as those traps are really paying off for their price. Like, they are sniping down so many scorpions, skirmishers, whatever, and now it's gonna be the counterattack through the hole here. And this is the time for Admiral Yi to equalize the villager numbers, at least decrease the numbers of his opponent's villagers by quite a bit. Still 118 villagers for Richard though, and he's now pushing very heavily on the north. We'll be able to start harassing the wood line yet again from Admiral Yi, and Admiral Yi definitely has wood control issues here, because he's barely chopping this down here in the middle. In fact, Admiral Yi is down to 16 lumberjacks, which is a big concern if you are trying to make skirmishers and halberdiers, and this might be the game here for Richard. He's able to push away Admiral Yi from all accessible wood, and that means that Admiral Yi will not be able to mass additional halberdiers, skirmishers for himself. Look at the eco right now for Admiral Yi. He has 92 villagers, but 23 of them are idle. It appears that Richard has solidified the control over the middle, and now he's gonna start sending in units. This is the time for this one. This is the time for the comeback, I think. because now if you have a few skirmishers here for Richard, he can just harass those Lumberjacks as well. No more wood available for Admiral Yi, and meanwhile for Richard, he still has a lot of wood to work with, to be honest. These are both players from the actual tournament. Yes, they are both players from the actual tournament with unknown identities. So, at this point, if you can just keep up the pressure on Admiral Yi's wood line over here on the north, you are gonna be absolutely fine. In fact, I would say that the eco for Richard is now much, much better, to be honest. I just said to be honest. The identities will be... what? Will the identities be revealed after the match? They will. That is correct. I'm getting tired, by the way. This is 5 hours of casting, and this is game number 3, by the way. So we could have 4 more matches. Of course, I did not just cast this series, but still, it's 4 hours of casting. For me, actually 5 hours. Anyways, there is going to be another batch of raiding cavalry coming in here from Richard, and Admiral Yi's army is still strong, 50, but the eco is so weak now. 85 vultures, 20 of them are idle. So, at this point, this is just not going to work for Admiral Yi if he cannot actually secure some wood control for himself, because he's just getting his eco ready to hell. I gotta say that Richard is doing a magnificent job raiding the opponent's eco. He has 115 villagers, 0 idols. Look at that food income! Okay, just look at that. Look at that food income that is just coming in here for him. It's crazy. Crazy food income here for Richard. He has just piled up like 1,000 food in 15 seconds or so. And yeah, the Hussar queue is also very cute. Would be nice to have some more stables, but where is Richard now? Richard, this is all he has. He has 19 arbalests, a few traps, few halberdiers. This is gonna be one big death blob, and that is it. He doesn't have anything else left. And meanwhile, on the other side, Admiral Yi is trying, but remember that Richard had 3 relics for entirety of the game. Meanwhile, Admiral Yi was at 2, so that extra gold and the fact that Richard also had a neutral gold pile at his disposal basically meant that we have a big gold advantage for Richard for most of the game. Surprisingly, he was behind in score for most of the game as well, but it appears that the Khmer trash will definitely be better than the one from Britons, and even though the Warwolf trap is doing everything he can to just start harassing those skirmishers, still, the skirms are doing enough damage on Admiral Yi's eco that basically Admiral Yi's wood income is... Look at that eco. It's like so slow, so sluggish. If you compare it to what we're actually seeing from Richard, this is a time when Admiral Yi will not be able to mass army, so even direct engagements will be beneficial now for Richard, even though those traps are exceptionally good at sniping down everything here. Wish we had capture age for this, like, you would probably see something like, I don't know, 500 kills on that trap alone. But anyways, for now, this hole is gonna be plugged in, and it appears that Richard wants to open up another front line over here with stables and siege ramps coming up from the south to start trading the eco. Insanely slow and grindy game, but I think either of these players would deserve a win here, but this appears to be a game for Richard. He steadily has the better eco, and he's just doing just enough to harass the eco of his opponent so that Admiral Yi is just unable to mass a big army here. Those arbs and traps are alive for an hour, so exceptionally good plays. But anyways, there's nowhere to run, that's the problem. Not enough wood lines to work with for Admiral Yi, basically. This is his only wood line, and look at that. This is why Admiral Yi cannot win this game. You don't have to take this fight over here for Richard. All he needs to do is just kill villagers here on this wood line, and that is going to work. Right now, Admiral Yi has 2 villagers on wood. That means that you will not be able to reseed your farms. That means that you will not be able to mass halberdiers. And if you don't mass halberdiers, the Khmer Hussars will just eat you up. Yet again, villagers going back to the wood line, but now it's about the mass. And I think Admiral Yi's military numbers will drop dramatically once we actually see him running out of resources, which is about to happen very soon. He has played exceptionally well with the Arbalest micro, with the Trebuchet micro, but overall he's getting just slowly grinded out here. Amazing plays, I think, and I'm still puzzled on who this guy could be for Richard, but I'm starting to believe that indeed it's a strong candidate to be Max, to be honest. He doesn't necessarily need to delete that many villagers, to be honest. Like, in fact, I wouldn't necessarily delete villagers. He does not know how many villagers his opponent has, so he could be like, oh yeah, my opponent has 100 villagers, I can't delete this many. He did delete a few, he's 109 right now, I think that's an okay count. And now it's going to be Rams pushing here, light cavalry will flood into the eco, but look at that. The eco of Admiral Yi is so weak, and meanwhile Richard has 4,000 food in the bank. He's not even using this, he doesn't have the population space to do it. Pushing in the middle as well with the Scorpion. What Scorpion? There's a Ram. And Skirmishers, Halberdiers, and I gotta say, there's nowhere to run now for Admiral Yi. He's gonna get harassed all day, all night. Meanwhile, he's trapping down those lumber camps, by the way, that's very cute. If this wasn't for Werewolf traps, I think this would be over for quite a long time ago. Anyways, light cavalry yet again in the mix for Admiral Yi. He's gonna snipe down that ram, which is actually a very nice achievement, but the Halberdiers will probably finish off the rest, and you have a bunch of Arbalest alive. But when your opponent is this heavy on skirmishers, I don't think that you can actually pull it off. Still, Admiral Yi is resisting. This is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. This is the typical scenario when you are just like, oh yeah, I have fought so hard in this game, I cannot give up on this. You don't want to lose a game like this, because imagine this, you're like, oh yeah, I don't mind losing a game in something like 15 minutes, let's say. But when a game drags 2 hours, you just don't want to lose it because you committed so much time and effort towards winning it. And Admiral Yi was in a winning position for so long. Like, he was able to push back the forces of Richard over here. He was already trapping down production buildings, but Richard held on with a bunch of traps. And now that he's able to spam in a few light cavalry, indeed, I think this is the time to go down to something like 90 villagers and more units here. Richard has traps, but honestly, he's trapping down lumber camps. He's trapping down lumber camps, so Admiral Yi will have an even worse wood eco. This is intentional, this is not a misclick. I love that. The reason why Richard is not going heavy on traps is because he's facing Britons with Werewolf, so he cannot win a trap war against that. You don't win against Werewolf. Anyways, one thing that is concerning here for Richard is that he doesn't have anything to fight against those light cavalry, just a few halberdiers, but that is not enough. But yet again, lumber camps going down over here. I never actually thought in my life I would actually be looking at a fight in which players are actually sniping lumber camps. That is a beautiful shot with that Werewolf trap. This is why Britons are still very good against the Khmer dead blob of Scorpions. Do Khmer have bombard cannons? A fair question, but Werewolf traps are still a challenge. Khmer do have bombard cannons. But still, challenging Werewolf traps is very hard. Meanwhile, I do consistently see that Richard doesn't have the halberdier numbers to fight this one. He's losing way too many skirmishers to light cavalry here. And that is a cause of concern for him. Would be nice to have some more halberdiers available to deal with the light cavalry over here. So, with this, there is going to be more and more hussars coming in. Admiral Yi counterattacking down south. He does not want to give up on this one. He does not want to give up on this one. His eco is so weak, and meanwhile, if you take a look at Richard's eco, it's absolutely amazing. They are chopping down the final trees left on the map. Okay, that was an overstatement, but really, they have consumed like 60% of the wood available on hideout, which is damn impressive. And I think that now the next plan for Richard is like, okay, I'm gonna take down these buildings here. He cannot push in the middle, so he wants to take down the buildings on the perimeter so he can slow down the military progress of Admiral Yi. I totally agree. I would also gladly exchange like a few bombard cannons for a few traps here, even though this is very hard to push. Like, Admiral Yi's micro with the traps is exceptionally good. So he has kept these traps alive for about an hour now, and they are just absolutely tearing apart everything over here. Amazing game, gotta say, it's an amazing game, and Admiral Yi is close to over-chopping this one, something he has to watch out for, and really the game could go down to the point where, hey, which wood is Admiral Yi going to take? He will have to fight for these trees, so it's not like, oh yeah, I still have safe wood. No, you don't have any safe wood left on the map anymore. The south is getting contested here quite heavily from Richard, and this is the main problem here for Admiral Yi. He's running out of wood. So, still a bunch of arbalests in the making, by the way. 28 arbalests, so Admiral Yi has managed to add a bunch of arbalests to his army very nicely. A shame I didn't see the early game Archer Micro. Could he be Leary? Could, but I feel like it's not Leary but MBL. This seems so MBL. With the previous game he was laming. Leary is a decent candidate as well because Admiral Yi has banned out the war maps, or like islands at least, and he has picked land heavy maps for himself. So from AM, definitely I would say either Leary or MBL if this is an AM player. Anyways, he's doing a beautiful job keeping those orbs alive, and that blob of orbs can deal a lot of damage as well here. Admiral Yi has a better KD for a steady time, and he's counterattacking again. Voyager counts very close to each other. Basically, Admiral Yi has no eco, by the way. So, again, push in the middle. Lumberjacks will be idle from Admiral Yi. 80 Voyagers with 21 idle right now. And slow and steadily, Richard is grinding this out, but it's a so slow progress. And like I said, Richard does have 3 relics compared to just 2 from his opponent. There's gonna be Siege Ram pushing in. I wonder if Richard knows where the monastery is. He could make a run for this monastery with a Siege Ram. Maybe he can pick off the monastery, and that way you could ungarrison 2 relics from Admiral Yi. Admiral Yi, though, has a very good blob of orbs now, though. He slowly massed orbs. He had like 19 orbs like 15 minutes ago. Slowly massed orbs, and a composition of light cavalry and orbs might actually make it happen here for Admiral Yi to counterattack this one. Like, in this late stage of the game, having 35 arbalests with all that Britain range is a big advantage. And now is the time for Admiral Yi to go for this wood line, I guess, because his villagers are still getting killed. There is a bit of a wood he could take here. Down south, though, is a big push coming up from Richard, so this is something that Admiral Yi will have to react to. Skirmishers against those arbalests will not be a beneficial one for Admiral Yi, but it's more about the raids here on the south. Rams tearing buildings apart, and still, this monastery could be a very important piece of the eco of Admiral Yi. Taking that down would be a big achievement, I would say. Anyways, traps coming up still for Richard. I am puzzled because of that. Like, what's the motivation at making traps when your opponent does have Werewolf traps available? Still, there is going to be a big push coming up down here. Another town center goes down. Still, Admiral Yi, 86 Voyagers, so he has a steady Voyager count right now. So, light cavalry raiding in the north. This is something I really love about Richard's moves here, by the way. He's attacking from the south. That forces Admiral Yi to fall back over there, because numbers are definitely higher for Admiral Yi, or for Richard. And when Admiral Yi goes back to the south, he's gonna attack on the north, pick off a few Voyagers. Still 79 Voyagers, but 24 of them are idle. And those arbalests might actually take a very disadvantageous fights against those skirmishers. Insanely good micro with the arbs, by the way. It's impressive how Admiral Yi is not losing any of his arbalests here. Like, he has so many things to focus on, produce Voyagers, mass produce units, and he's still not losing any of those arbalests. Meanwhile, for Richard, he's constantly pop-capped. Admiral Yi is holding this at 138 population, and even losing those houses will not be a big issue. Taking down the market, though, could be a big achievement. You need that market, I think, for Richard. If you take down the market, your opponent will not be able to trade resources, which is a big achievement. Right now, Admiral Yi has 4 Lumberjacks available. 4 Lumberjacks out of the 70 Voyagers he does have. Could Richard grind this out finally? Oh man, this is definitely one of the best games of this entire tournament, even though this is just a show match, but sometimes show matches are the ones that really deliver. And still, the market stands, and even though the stables will go down, that's nice, but taking on the market, taking on the monastery would be the big hit onto the eco of Admiral Yi here. And meanwhile, it appears Admiral Yi wants to make one big push in the middle, traps taking down buildings here. Slowly, it's gonna be a concern for Richard as well to get gold or wood for himself. Like, he's running low on wood. Overall, they're chopping down the middle almost completely. Anyways, not enough halberdiers here for Richard to deal with all those light cavalry. Reinforcements are just coming in right now. Still, Admiral Yi, 130 population. Meanwhile, Richard is constantly pop-capped. If you take a look at his queue, this is glorious. Has like 15 stables that has 15 light cavalry queued up. And I think this is the end of the story here from Admiral Yi. He has tried this, but he's getting outmassed so hard, and he just can't stop the Rams. It's not really about losing the army, it's about stopping the Rams. How do you stop that many rams? I think his traps are still alive indeed in the middle, but there is the GG. After a 2 hours long game, Richard the Lionheart wins this matchup. Oh my gosh. This was actually magnificent, glorious, and beautiful. So, not much to say about this one. Do you think the hole in the middle was a mistake by blue? The hole was made by green, and I don't think it was a mistake, because I feel like if he does not make that hole to raid, he gets defeated on the north. So, like, that was like a final chance effort. I don't blame him for it. It's tough to tell if this was the one that decided games. I think this is more about the extra gold. So tracing back to what we have seen, there was one neutral gold here and the other one over here. So Richard had way more gold. You will see that not just with the relic gold, it's also with the mining gold available. So if you take a look at the eco counts, well, this is actually, well, speaks for itself. 26,000 gold for Richard, 1800 for Admiral. However, if you subtract, there is like 2,000 difference in terms of relic gold, but 8,000 difference between the two players. That 6,000 was basically the extra that we have had. Is that 6,000? It's closer to 5,000, but yeah, basically 5,000 gold extra for Richard from mines. That's actually very important that he was able to do that. KD's very better for Yi. So Admiral Yi was exceptionally good with the KDs. He also killed a lot of Scorpions early on. This wasn't how Richard planned this game, that's very important. He wanted to go for something like Siege Ram Scorpion type of a deathmatch approach, but ended up going for Ultimate Trash Wars. Khmer Trash proved to be better, but it's more about Admiral Yi was unable to do any damage to the eco of Richard, and Richard was able to constantly raid him. And the combination of the two meant that there was just basically no chance for Admiral Yi to keep his Voyager numbers up high. So, give me a second to grab a drink here because this was a damn long game, but after that we will progress on even further for what could be the next game. We still have a bunch of games coming up over here in this one because we just have 2-1 standing and this is a best of 7, so 2 games at minimum more coming up. Alright, so time for game number 3 over here, or 4 over here, as we are going into slopes, as I welcome everybody to game number 4 in a best of 7 in between Richard Lionheart and Admiral Sun-Shin, and for some reason they changed colors. I am tilted on this one, because, can we go back? No, we can't go back. Like, we could have Richard playing in blue, that's the best I can give you, because they were red and blue by default. I think previous game, we had Richard playing in blue, so he's gonna be blue as well here. And the right side, Admiral Yi in red, playing as Indians. So the thing is, we are having slopes, this is a preset map, neither of the players have this home map. No surprise about the India mirror pick here. You are just gonna have the lakes milled very very soon, and you will have an insanely good food eco to start off with. And after that, probably Scouts will be the name of the game. Scouts into Archers could be the reasonable way of doing things, but I feel like I probably see more reason behind Scouts into Camels, but it also depends on how much damage you can do with your Archers. So, looking at the base of Richard over here, you are gonna have a fairly well avoidable left side. Stone is quite nice, but it's more about this gold that is super safe. Has some backwood as well, so it's easy wall off for Richard, and he will have a bunch of gold available. On the other side, Admiral Yi, gold and stone accessible. I would say this is a bit concerning. If you wall over here, you are supposed to be fine, but this is probably the safest gold for Admiral Yi to take. He's gonna wall off over here. Stone at the back will also help out quite a bit for later stages. Anyways, we are going to have the first board coming back in. So both players will basically play this as normal Arabia at the initial stages, but instead of sending Voyagers to berries, they will go for the mill on the shorefish. You already see some Voyagers out there for Admiral Yi. And this is what I was trying to talk about for Admiral E. This is not something you frequently see from players doing. Like what I was talking about at this Verges onto the lake instead of berries approach is what Richard is doing. However, there is a different approach, and this is based on having a very good food eco at the beginning. Basically, the idea is that you send out your villagers, free villagers, early on to go for the mill and the fishing. But this denies you from being able to get a lumber camp down because you don't have the wood for it, so you will be taking the straggler cheese. This gives you a very good early boost in terms of food eco, and I kind of love this move because this is probably better for this kind of a map, but this will also mean that you will consume your straggler trees. But anyways, as you can see, Admiral Yi is not having a lumber camp just now, and the reason behind it is because he has had free villagers on shorefish for a much more significant amount of time than what we're actually seeing from Richard here. Anyways, second boar already in as well for Admiral Yi, so he's not even consuming any of his sheep. I like that. So the fastest way of getting food here with Indians is hunt and the shorefish. With that, he could have an insanely fast uptime. So, like what we are seeing from Admiral Yi is probably good for 18 pop scouts here. I think he's still gonna go for something like 19 because it's a bit safer, but 18 pop scouts is definitely doable with such a build up here from Admiral Yi. If he just drops off the food from this one, cancels the villager, makes loom, he could click up at 18 pop, but indeed it's probably going to be 19 pop. Coming in very soon. It appears that Richard wants to do some early scouting, makes me believe that he could actually be thinking about the rush. There is the loom indeed, and we will see 19 pop scouts very well executed. Yep, indeed it's an interesting trade-off, and it is only reasonable on such a map like that. I could make an argument maybe for civilizations like Mongols on a hunt-heavy map, you could probably take this trade-off as well, but if you want to farm, you probably are better off having your straggler trees still alive. Anyways, this is important for Richard. He has spotted multiple villagers walking to the wood line, so he knows that Admiral Yi has clicked up, because you move your villagers when you, at least approximately when you click up. So it is gonna be Richard spotting, hey, my opponent has clicked up and he knows that there is gonna be scouts coming his way. I do expect him to start walling very soon, and indeed that is going to be the case. And Richard basically will have somewhat different feudal age time. He's doing 20 pop scouts and will wall off his left side. For now, right side is still not walled, and on the other side of things there is another walls from Admiral Yi. Like I said, my best guess for Admiral Yi right now is MBL. On the other side, I am still puzzled, because I don't see any specific characteristic about Richard's game that would make me believe that it is this player or that player. Max could be a reasonable candidate. Maybe Tato could be an option. Anyways, would love to see a war map being played out in between the two, like a war heavy map, in which we are actually seeing war micro and a lot of war combat. That would be a decent way of telling if Richard is actually a player like Tato or so. But I'm feeling it's more about someone like Dogao, although no, he cannot be Dogao because he's using different orders of luring in the board and building houses than what Dogao uses. So Max seems like a strong candidate, to be honest. I think that both of these players are players who have been invited and not qualifiers. This is just my feeling. So something like MBL versus Max seems like a reasonable duo here. Anyways, interestingly, this is a new approach that we are seeing here, and this is why this is not very efficient, because you will have your scouts popping out right next to your villagers and they will just block each other, but you will have the brax and the stable on your fish eco, so you want to have a big emphasis on your fish. Meanwhile, however, you are playing wide open. This is an extremely risky approach, because what is going to happen here, as it appears that Admiral Yi is going to lose his initial scout, is that your opponent is going to be able to hit your wood eco quite hard. So, yep, I don't like this. Hera and Larry are a bit too meta, do weird starting builds on slopes. I don't think Hera is a meta player, by the way, at all. In fact, Hera is the one who invented the 2 militia rush, so I would say, with Lithuanians of course, So I would say that Hera is actually a quite innovative player. And not someone who just plays the meta. Anyways, an early archer switch coming in here from Admiral Yi, as his opponent will almost be fully walled. And meanwhile, on the other side of things though, you will have Richard, who could just run into the base of Admiral Yi, but he's not doing it so far. So basically, Admiral Yi can get away without any walls here. He's just gonna have two spearmen overlooking the entire place. Both players playing very defensive plays here, by the way, and we do have a lot of idle time on Richard's Verges. Richard? What's up with these wills? Okay, there was some idle time, but he did manage to address that issue. Anyways, still Admiral Yi is wide open from both directions, so I would say that there is plenty of potential for Richard to do damage here. With 5 scouts available, I think this could be a massacre if he gets into a wood line like that. Of course, Admiral Yi could definitely wall his Verges off, but well, you can't always account for that. And it appears that Richards is probably going for the interception on the Verges that will be walking back to the village. You can tell that the lake is running short on fish. So at like 13-ish minutes, 13-14 minutes, with 4 Indian villagers, this lake is going to be running dry, and that means that this is the time when the villagers will walk back into the village. Nice quick was there for Admiral Yi, but like I said, there is more to this one. There is some nice quick walls around those villagers as well. Beautiful quick walls coming in from Admiral Yi so far. If you can quick wall like that, you don't necessarily need walls in the initial stage of the part. And meanwhile, walls over here coming up from Admiral Yi as well. There is no chance for Richard to do any kind of damage, but a conveniently placed hole on the wall would just allow him to escape if he wants to. But he appears to just try and play for villager picks. There is going to be an overchop over here. I wonder if Admiral Yi is going to notice that for now. But with additional spearmen arriving for Richard, he wants to fight this within the base of his opponent. For now, though, archers will make that very hard, because archers will pick off the spearmen, and indeed, Richard will just run away with this one for now. There is no chance he will ever get into those villagers if Admiral Yi is paying attention. And like I said, for Admiral Yi, the name of the game is sniping down those spearmen. And if he can do that, he's gonna be able to engage with his own scouts and spearmen. Anyways, Bloodlines coming in for Richard makes me believe that he wants to commit towards this scout approach and probably continue with camels at some time. He's adding 3 more scouts. This could be interesting because, like I said, there is an overchop over here. So if Admiral Yi commits a lot to the left side of the base while you already have Richard evacuating his villagers, so he will find nothing over there. In fact, regrouping is the scout force coming up from Richard, and let's see, if he could just run in here, this could be disaster. He does not notice. Richard does not notice this, and with that, there is no chance of doing any damage over there, and still there is a hole on the right side. It's gonna be fixed as well. So Richard's commitment towards scouts would have been good if he manages to pick off a villager. Now is the time. Now is the time. If Admiral Yi is not noticing this, this is gonna be a disaster indeed. Even with quick walls, this has to be at least 2 villagers lost from Admiral Yi. Beautifully played there from Richard, and overchop really hurting Admiral Yi there. On the other side though, Admiral Yi is also bashing his way into the base of Richard, so I would say this is the time for Richard to either fall back or decide the game. That's their thing. This villager is also exposed over there, so you can pick off another one. And what is the plan here for Richard? He's getting dangerously exposed. He's market walling behind this one. I think there might still be an opening right next to the market. Yep, there is, and there's going to be a stone gate coming in here from Richard. He's holding on to this one quite nicely, and he has done massive damage to the eco of Admiral, even though the villager count is still identical for both players, but I think that we might have wheelbarrow up for Richard already. Anyways, he's getting close to click up to Castle Age, but now he has scouts and archers inside his eco, and clearing that up is going to be very hard. He's sending his own scouts back. Evacuating the wood line is going to be the case for him, and it's much easier for Admiral Yi now to do damage because he has the scouts, he has the archers. So even quick walls will not help out for Richard over here, and now is the time when Richard is going to suffer from the raids. Archers will be perfect at picking off villagers on the gold mine, and there is just no answer from Richard to those archers. Best thing he can do is send in his bloodline scouts. There is no bloodlines for Admiral Yi here. Meanwhile, it's also +1 armor for Richard. And like I said, a lot of idle time is on the villagers of Richard. He's gonna take this fight here. He's fighting against a few spearmen as well, but with +1 armor, with bloodlines, this is definitely a fight for him to take, as Admiral Yi is gonna be a bit faster clicking up to Castle Age. Food eco is the problem here for Richard, which is basically caused by the fact that his villagers on the berries were idle for quite a significant amount of time. So he's probably have to buy himself up. He does have the market to do it, so just buy 100 food or just garrison the Verges and click up. Cancellation times will be identical with Richard having 1 Verges lead right now, and he still has a bunch of scouts left over here. Light cavalry could be something to consider here, but I think he's just gonna go for pure camos. On the other side of things, this is just a single range with multiple more archers coming in from Admiral Yi. And it appears that he wants to wall off his woodline a bit more, does not want another overchop to kill him here, and forging on the way from Richard. I like the pure camos play a bit more, to be honest, compared to what we're actually experiencing from Admiral Yi, and it appears that there is another overchop over here. I think in between the house and the woodline seems to be the overchop, and that is a disaster for Admiral Yi. Richard is climbing back into this game, ladies and gentlemen. Beautifully played so far from him with the Scouts micro, and he is going to be just a bit behind in Castellation. There is going to be Bloodlines coming in here for Admiral Yi, and with the stable coming up, he's also going to go for Scout or Camos, but I feel like he's lacking a lot more upgrades than what we're actually seeing here, as there might be another overchop. Nice walls, beautiful walls, but guess what? These scouts will still be able to escape. A lot of damage is being done on the base of Admiral Yi in this one. Another 2 Verges are just walking outside, and that will be 2 more Verges dying. Perfect value for the scout's aggression that you're actually utilizing here for Richard. I gotta say, I am super proud of how Richard is actually rebounding into this one, because this is an exceptional way of playing this one. Anyways, the first camos will be able to clean up these scouts, but as you can see, Admiral Yi, no arm upgrades. This armor is just coming from the Indian bonus. Meanwhile, if you take a look at Richard, he does have +1/+1 already, so his camos will be much better if you compare +1 armor, +2, or +1 attack and +2 pierce armor or +1 melee armor that we are talking about. I like the camos fair, like I said, from both sides, but when you are talking about 8 Verges lead from Richard, who is gonna have 2 TCs very soon, 8 Verges lead, 24-9 is the KD and has better upgrades on his camos. This is looking like a very good game for Richard to win. He's gonna be 2 town centers. On the other side of things, we'll have Admiral Yi adding a town center on his second gold pile as well. So both players at 2, but better upgrades by far for Richard. Forging will be there as well for Admiral Yi, but with chain boarding coming in for Richard, he just needs to wait until that actually happens and then start to engage this one. He's just waiting for the right moment to attack from 2 sides and absolutely annihilate his opponent's forces here. Indeed, this is a fight that Admiral Yi will not be able to take, and even with the Spearman helping, this is going to be a tough fight for Admiral Yi. He's going to lose a lot of forces here, most likely all of it. It seems the 2 camos are able to escape, but the rest of it is going to be cleaned up. This is a decent cleanup here from Richard, even though he doesn't have consistent camo production on both of his stables, but well, for now, I think this is more than enough. Especially with these scouts running around, they can still pick off a few Verges if they don't get killed by the camos. But still, idle time on the Verges of Admiral Yi. Right now, he's 10 Verges behind, which is a major deficit to overcome. And with the monastery being added here from Richard, he's rebounding into this one very, very nicely. Husbandry on the way for him as well. And there is the overchop we were talking about. And if the camos can just rush inside, this could be a disaster. Cav Archer's another horrible idea over here, but you don't missing Botkin arrow in this one. And that is a cause of concern here. In fact, there is just 1 stable, if I'm not mistaken, for Admiral Yi, and he has 1 archer range. Now for Richard, just take this down. Your opponent can't stop you from taking this stable down, and you can cripple his camo production. It appears that we might have a switch back into Cav Archers from Admiral Yi, but he doesn't have a good production on that. Overall, his military production is very bad. These walls are kinda crippling this gold eco over here, not very efficient either. So with the TC being added over here from Admiral Yi, he's gonna be on free, and I do assume that we are going to see a TC being dropped over here indeed as well from Richard. One camo could harass the Verges over here, but I don't think that he will be able to do massive damage. And right now, military numbers better for Richard. He does have 9 Verges advantage as well, and camos apparently are moving to the left side here for Admiral Yi, but they will not find anything. I think they want to bash their way inside over here, but this is just not going to happen. And with this, 3 TCs for both players, but I feel like the military right now for Richard is just much better. Switching into Cav Archers will not really work for Admiral Yi in my point of view. In fact, he's not producing anything. Like, if you take a look at Admiral Yi's point of view, he is just massing Verger count, but with 3 town centers you can do that. He's placing this TC right next to the stone though, which makes me believe that we could see Admiral Yi adding these Verges to stone and then adding TC number 4. When you don't make military like this, you probably play for a very defensive game with wall-offs and then just go for the boom and try to outboom your opponent, because you should know that your opponent is 3 TCs as well at this time of the game. But it appears that Admiral Yi is buying 100 stone. I don't think he actually mined that, but he has 3 town centers and he still has 100 stone left. So I guess he bought 100 stone and he's gonna drop a town center somewhere else as well. Maybe on this gold pile could be a reasonable position. Anyways, for now, it is Richard having a massive lead. 36-15 is the KD, which is already a decent one. He's also picking up relics. Very nice rebound after the first 2 games for Rich. And with better upgrades, +1, +2, and this is just +1 and nothing for Admiral Yi. This is not something that he can fight. Is Admiral Yi going for Imperial? Unlikely. He is 6 villagers behind still. So, no military production, no military. That might be a monk pick-off though for Admiral Yi if he's paying attention, but nope, he is not. And indeed, there is a second town center right next to the other one, but basically a GG is called here, and I totally understand that. So, an interesting game number 4 here, and I totally understand this GG here. Like, Richard has a very good Indian army, basically the kind of army that Richard wants to play with. On the other side, Admiral Yi is having very little upgrades. He had a few Cav archers, but no upgrades on those. And meanwhile, on the other side of things, so I would say that this was just a way better game overall from Richard. Somewhat puzzling what Admiral Yi was trying to achieve here. I just don't understand. Like, he was trying to go for an archer into Cav archer type of a move. However, I just don't believe that this is what he was supposed to be doing. Like, it should work, but he has lost one of his armies over here, and I think after that, the massive overchops that he has had just killed so many villagers that he fell behind in our eco so hard. If you take a look at the eco numbers, it's kind of self-explanatory. More gold for Admiral Yi, but when you are behind by 2,000 food, 1,000 wood, this is just definitely much better for Richard in this one, and that means that Richard is rebounding to equal this out for a 2 against 2. Now, let's see. If I'm not mistaken, I'm gonna check this on what Robo said. Robo said that I will post in 2 separate spoilers the player guess as their opponent, and then who the players are after some time after G2. G2? What? G4. So game 4. As I may not be around for the final game. So that means that we will only have a reveal on the players' identities after the series. But the spoilers will be posted by Robo in the caster Discord. This is just something I wanted to check. And it appears that we are actually going back into standard colors, thank God. So, game number 5 upcoming over here, as I am going to welcome you to game number 5 in a best of 7 in between Admiral Yi and Richard, the Lionheart in the Hidden Cup free show match. The map is going to be Gold Rush. This is the Hidden Cup version of Gold Rush. A map that we haven't really seen played out a lot, to be honest. So, Richard on the south playing as Slavs in blue, and on the northern side of the map it's gonna be Khmer being utilized by Admiral Yi now. Khmer, a very versatile civilization. We did see that their trash is quite exceptional. It's a very good trash civilization, and overall very good at holding position. Now, the first thing that stands out to me in this Hidden Cup version of Gold Rush is that this is way smaller than a normal Gold Rush in 1v1s. Like, if you just take a look at this hill, way less gold available. Overall, this hill is smaller as well. So basically, like, one well-positioned castle can cover the entire thing. So it's not like, oh yeah, I'm having a castle somewhere around over here and my opponent can still mine here. Nope, it appears that a single well-placed castle might be able to deny the entire thing. You also have less wolves than compared to the standard Gold Rush map in ranked games, or used to be ranked games because now we are having Golden Pit. But you also always have a wolf in the middle here. So something like placing a palisade foundation on top of it is definitely something to consider. Looking at the map of Admiral Yi over here, he does have a stone at the back. Double stones at the back, actually, something that he might not actually scout. Indeed, he might miss out on this stone pile. This could be a bit of an issue for him. Players just don't scout the edges of the map so often. But this could be a problem if he misses out on this stone in late game. Not sure if it's going to be, but if he's running short on stone and he does not scout that, he's gonna be in trouble. Anyways, what's even more concerning is the gold spawns. Admiral Yi's base from the south is wide open, and both of his golds are dangerously exposed. In fact, they are within the range of a single tower, so if Richard spots this one, making a towering attempt here would definitely be very reasonable, to be honest. So, on the other side, for Richard, this is probably a somewhat better map. The stones, though, oh man. Is this the kind of map we had a drama with in one of the tournaments last year? Because I want to talk about this in a second. I think it was at Boar Spawn, but this is the type of a map which is very bad but not Admiral restart type of a map. So, first thing to point out, Richard, very good gold piles, he can wall off here and he can wall off here and he will have this gold safe. However, there is gonna be no way he's gonna tower because the stones are here and here. If Richard wants to get to the stone mines, he has to walk all the way around over here and into the stone mine. In fact, this is probably the closest stone mine to him. So, this is not an Admiral restart because this is accessible stone for him. This is just very unfortunate because he cannot walk to it in a short distance. So, last year we had a tournament which basically had the same thing, but with the boar spawning on the other side. I think it was on Scandinavia, and it was MBL who was playing in this one, in that one, I think. Not sure which tournament it was, but I think it was MBL, and it was in Scandi. And you had the boar on the other side of the forest. I think he didn't even scout it because it was so far away. It was even a longer wood line, so it was like 1 minute of walking all the way through that. So these stones will be very hard to access for Admiral, for Richard. I don't think that Admiral Yi will scout that, but I feel like if Admiral Yi scouts that, it wouldn't be a strong argument by towering your opponent here, because you can still deny this gold pass here with a good tower, and your opponent has zero chance of counter towering because he has no stone accessible to him easily. So you could just corner your base or corner your opponent in his base without any accessible stone very easily. And it appears that we're gonna have a scouts fight over here, which is gonna be decided by a Voyager approaching here from Admiral E, and that means that both players will leave at 2/3 of their HP remaining on their initial scouts. So 4 on wood for Admiral E, and this is gonna be quite a lot of wood already from Richard. So is he planning for a fast castle approach over here? Let's see. 19 Voyagers only right now. With Khmer, you can definitely pull off basically a scout's opening without a barracks, and he's gonna be utilizing that gold. Admiral E is definitely MBL. Like, I am now 100% sure on that. He lamed his opponent on Bay. He does not like war maps, and now he makes a wall like this. Admiral Yi is MBL. I can take that for granted. So, the question is, who is Richard? I would say I'm getting closer and closer to thinking that this guy could be Max, because he's a decent overall player, but there's nothing like very exceptionally... Like there's nothing that stands out in his game overall. He's playing good, he's playing what he's supposed to do, but nothing weird, nothing unconventional that we're actually seeing from him, as he's gonna pick up the Feudal Age at 20 Voyagers, 21 pop. Scouts is coming up. Nope, he did not research Guard Tower. If he'd had a game with Guard Towers, I would definitely think it's Max. So, having a game with Guard Tower heavy approach from Richard would confirm me that this is Max. This is the only thing that makes me think that he might not be Max, but he's still my best guess right now. Other candidate could be Tato, to be honest. Anyways, there is still a hole over here, but I guess Admiral Yi will wall it off. Yi. Don't tell me he thinks that this is not a hole. Oh man, this could be disaster because Richard is going for 21 pop scouts, and I think Richard has scouted that hole, right? Yep, he does see that hole. It's very, very nice, and he did not send in his scout. That's super important. So he's not like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna show you where this hole is. He's gonna wait until he has 3 scouts available to send it in. There's the stable coming up over here, and on the other side of things, Admiral Yi clicking up at 24 Voyagers. This is a Khmer fast castle approach here, And with a Khmer fast castle, probably going straight up knights is what I'm thinking. He will not need any buildings to click up into Castle Age, but I feel like he will need to add at least 1 or 2 more villagers, because he feels a bit low on food. This is why he added a villager onto, what is this? Onto the farms. So you will see that at least 1 villager will need to be added. Anyways, Richard still checking if this hole is open, and look at that. He's just watching that hole. If there's a villager coming this way to the vault off, he will try to delay that. But for now, he just waits out with this one. Needs to watch out not to reveal his plans to his opponent here. And I think Admiral Yi did not spot it. You will still need a third scout. But once you have 3 scouts over here, your opponent is Khmer. So he doesn't have a barracks. He doesn't even need a barracks. So you are almost guaranteed. And oh boy, the villager finds it at the most crucial time. Oh man, this could have been so good for Richard. What I wanted to say is that when Khmer are playing on a map like this, when you're so far away from your opponent, or when you are actually seeing for Khmer fast castle, that's basically almost guaranteed that he's not making barracks, because let's say a Khmer player is fast castling for knights, he will only make the stable. So for this reason, you are almost guaranteed not to have spearmen from your opponent, so if you go for a scout's opening and find a hole, you can pick off a lot of villagers before he could actually react to that one, given that your opponent can't actually quick call well. Anyways, now your job is to spread out the attacks over here. There is 2 spearmen for Richard as well. Spread out your attacks, make sure that your opponent has to repair multiple sections of the wall. And for Admiral Yi, very important, not to overpick these berries. If he opens a hole with the berries over there, that is gonna be a disaster. Fast castle on the way, like I said, for Admiral Yi, and he is going for a knights-based approach in this one. Meanwhile, fully walled is Richard. I wonder if he knows about any stone. Richard doesn't know about stone. He does see this stone mine, but he's like, where's all my stone at? I want to point out a minor fact here for Richard before we actually have any deeper combat. This is a bad mistake. Like, I'm not sure if he has tried, if he's fully walled or not, but there could be a hole over there. So, just looking at like this, I'm thinking, hey, there could be a hole. However, if he just walls his base, right-clicks outside and sees the villager walking in this direction, that means that there is no hole over there. But just by looking at that kind of a scouting, that would make me think that, hey, he did not check it for a hole. I do assume that he right-click his villager outside, and if the villager starts walking from this point, for example, all the way through, then you know that there is no hole over there in here, because the villager will have to walk all the way around. Anyways, slough farming will probably make it possible for Richard to catch up with his opponent, but there is a bunch of idle time on this town center actually, so I think you could have popped out 1 more villager here for Richard while we're waiting here. In fact, villagers at the back idle as well. Sloppy from Richard here, as you are gonna have knights coming up here. Hey Hyuna, if you were university, I would forward you. Thank you. That's beautiful. Thank you. Like, if you were deathmatch, I would build a university in you. Just to have a good answer to that. Anyways, knights coming in here, no magnificent upgrades, but, well, you don't even need a lot of upgrades. We have seen that Khmer knights are actually quite okay, even reasonable as cavaliers in Imperial Age, and you will have a 4 TC coming up from Admiral Yi, and I do assume he's gonna add 1 additional town center very soon. Maybe in the middle on the gold as well. Nice quick walls around those villagers. As I'm jinxing it, nope. Beautiful quick walls. Stronger and stronger feeling that this is MBL. On the other side, I am still puzzled. Could really be max, to be honest. We'll have to check the list of the players available, because, like, Richard has some strong games, but sometimes he has some very, very sloppy moves. Like, that idle time before Castle Age, he could have just popped out 1 more villager because he was still so far away from getting that click up. Or just garrison the villagers and hope that he has enough to make sure that he can click up. But still, he was delayed, and I think when he reaches Castle Age, he's gonna be behind by quite a significant amount of villagers. So you will probably have 3 villagers deficit, even without your opponent producing villagers on the 2nd TC just yet. This is just gonna start. And with a siege workshop here, this is actually quite decent from Admiral Yi. The response to that from Richard will probably be his own knights alongside a bunch of monks, probably. So I would expect a monastery being dropped very soon here from our Slavic player. You will need to repair those walls, and knights can bash their ways through very, very easily. And this is the moment to point out that Slavs do have okay monks, so they're only missing heresy. Aside from that, Slavs have fully upgraded monks. So you could go for something like a pike and monk approach here for Richard, because there's a chance that you are going to see knights and mangonels, knights and scorpions. Oof, that's a strong composition as well. Monks and mangonels seems like the response to that, to be honest, here for Richard, alongside probably a few pikemen. But still, not sure if Admiral Yi will be able to bash his way in here. I think the Voyager will be just enough to protect this base. +1 armor there for Richard against basically no upgrade Khmer Knights here, not even Bloodlines, so the Knights will be way better for Richard right now. However, he's playing this at one town center and monks and knights. On the other side of things, Khmer will have an insane boom in this one. So you already have 10 Voyagers advantage for Admiral Yi, which is extremely significant. So 10 Voyagers at 20 minutes is a major eco lead for Admiral Yi, and I think Admiral Yi is gonna drop a TC somewhere within his own base maybe as well. Maybe on this gold mine would make a very reasonable town center spot, but it appears that he just wants to play very aggressive and control the middle. That seems like a reasonable decision as well. So with this, Richard will have to play the role of the aggressor as he's adding monastery number 2, so indeed he wants to continue with those Slavic monkas, and I don't blame him for it. It's a very good unit to utilize against the Knights approach. It's a bit trickier because like converting Scorpions is definitely an option, unless you run into their range, but still, if you have a lot of Knights here from Admiral Yi, this is going to be a bit of a problem. I could imagine Admiral Yi trying to mix in a few light cavalry, because with light cavs you could just snap down the monks. So like light cav Scorpion could be a composition that Richard would struggle against. And the funny thing here for Admiral Yi, he doesn't need to be very aggressive. He can just boom here because his opponent is just on one town center. So double monastery. There's gonna be the second town center coming in here. Of course, he has Slavic farming available, but when you already have 12 Voyagers lead, that is a quite significant deficit to overcome for your opponent, and it appears that the scouts will be unable to pick off this monk over here. So, for this, you already have 2 Voyagers on stone coming up from Admiral Yi, and he has the waypoint from his town center set into this stone mine, and that makes me believe that whenever Admiral Yi is able to pile up enough stone, he's going to be able to drop a castle somewhere in the middle, and then the clock starts to tick for Richard. It's not a horrible scenario right now for Richard, because he's still fine at protecting his own base, and he still has gold excess, but like I said, he can't wait forever trying to contest the gold in the middle. I like how Admiral Yi is dropping a lot of outposts for vision. Who is that pro player who loves to drop outposts? There is one. Like, I'm still fairly certain this is MBL, but there is like one pro who really loves to drop outposts all the way around the map. Like, I think that could be Max as well. Of course, I still believe that green is probably MBL for a couple of reasons I discussed before, but anyways, there is gonna be monks getting a conversion. Yep, I think they got one conversion, but that is it. Even with Sensity, they're getting absolutely torn apart, and now is the time for Richard to make his push. He's gonna idle a bunch of Voyagers over here, but his eco is also idled, because even worse... Oh man, this is over here. This is so over. Richard did not lose, or what, Admiral Yi did not lose any Voyagers basically to the aggression here in the middle. Like lost a few monks or so, but this was a massacre. Right now, 23 Voyagers lead coming up for Admiral Yi, make it 24. The Knights will clean this up, but 3 town centers against 2 with 24 Voyagers advantage. This is not something that you can actually fight against right now if you're Richard. So, this is gonna be so rough for him. He's slowly running out of gold here within his own base, so like I said, clock is ticking for him as well. And when your opponent does have the Khmer eco, which is quite decent, when your opponent does have a this significant Voyager lead, it's gonna be very hard to overcome. And I do see multiple barracks being raised, so the pikeman switch will happen here, as Richard will start mixing in some light cavalry to his forces, because he knows he's running out of gold. Another beautiful snipe on one Siege Workshop Villager, maybe even 2 Oh man, this is slipping out of the hands of Richard here. His previous 2 games were absolutely exceptional, but Admiral Yi has regained his former power, and now he is just unleashing that upon his opponent. 26 Verges advantage right now for Admiral Yi, and he's gonna have a bunch of pikemen, and I don't think that Richard has any kind of answer to those pikemen right now. Richard only has +1 armor on those knights either as well, so it's not very magnificent upgrades. At least 3 relics is in the sand of Richard, and he's gonna pop out a bunch of monks and light cavalry, but pikes will be a decent answer to that, especially if you can mess them. Not a lot of upgrades, but forging is there, which definitely helps out quite a bit. And when you have 4 barracks massing pikemen, even monks will not be a solution. Like, if you have just 1 barracks adding a few pikemen, monks can probably address that issue, because if they can convert like 2 or 3 pikemen out of your 5, then that's already a decent one. But when you are actually facing like 4, 5, 6 barracks, you can't convert that many pikes here. And there is atonement coming in for Richard, so he wants to convert a few monks. Still, my question is that, do you have enough monks to convert that many pikes? Because the pikes will be the real issue here. Redemption on the way for Admiral Yi. So this is interesting. Admiral Yi is the one who wants to convert the mangonels here of his opponent, probably even scorpions if Richard goes for a few scorpions to deal with the pikemen. However, it is gonna be Richard who has atonement on his monks. That is gonna be the heal advantage on the side of that mangonel. That means that Admiral Yi will win that. Meanwhile, there's gonna be conversions coming in. 1 knight converted. Conversions going back and forth here. So basically, I think both sides converted a bunch of knights, and this is gonna be a fairly bad victory, I would say, for Richard. He's gonna win this fight, but basically at horrible costs. And when he's getting outmassed by 22 Verges, you don't want to win a fight barely. Like, look at that. He still has a few knights alive, he still has that monk alive. He might be able to pull this one off with the monk healing, but look at that. He has 3 units remaining, and Admiral Yi can just continue to spam more and more pikes. There is going to be some mangonels, but if you take a look at Admiral Yi's resource income, he does have enough stone to make a castle right now in the middle, and that would basically make it almost impossible for his opponent to drop a castle in the middle, and that would just solidify the middle control for Admiral Yi. There is the castle coming in indeed for Yi, and with 3,000 now for Richard, he tries to reboom into this one, and he's getting close to come to Imperial. That could be the only chance he comes back into this one if he has the answer, but Khmer is a tough matchup for Slavs here. That's my problem. So you will need something to deal with those pikemen. If Admiral Yi goes for cavalry heavy approach, we will not see that, but the idea is that if Admiral Yi goes for cavalry heavy approach, like something like light cavalry scorpion, something that we have seen from Richard in the previous, or like the hideout game, then that is not something that Slavs can really stop, like maybe Onager Halberdier, but this is a tough micro. But anyways, I think once we have seen that 20 villagers being massacred over here from Richard, I think it was over. And it was so close. This hole was walled off in the final seconds before Richard could have started massacring villagers here with multiple scouts. If Richard goes in there, he might win the game before we even get to Castle Age for Admiral Yi. But those knights killing the villagers over there was probably the end of the game over there for Richard. And that means that Admiral Yi is having a 3-2 lead now. Max really likes the Slavs on Gold Rush Golden Pit, so that could be a tell. Decent idea. Overall, I was having Max vibes overall on him. So, I gotta say, like, Max is the type of player who doesn't have anything special about his playstyle. Like, there's a few things, like Gower Towers, for example, but in a lot of cases, Max doesn't have very special things in his own playstyle, but he's still a very good player. So, there's a bunch of players who doesn't have anything special in their playstyle, but out of the players who could really make it competitive and who could win a game like Hideout, I would say Max is the most reasonable candidate, and I'm fairly certain that Admiral Yi is probably the MBL. Anyways, Admiral Yi, way better eco, no surprise about that one. KD was on his side as well. Richard did capture 3 relics for 500 gold, but the villager count tells the whole story. As we will go into game number 6 over here, Japanese mirrors on High Tide, we are going to be taking a look at. So welcome everybody, this is going to be game number 6 in a best of 7 in between Richard the Lionheart and versus Admiral Sun-Shin in the Hidden Cup free promotion show match hosted by T90. $200 to go down in between these two players. 150 goes for the winner and 50 goes for the loser of this event. So the map is Hideout, and one thing to point out before we go deeper into anything else, this is a different version of High Tide they are actually using than what we have seen in the qualifiers. In the qualifiers one, we didn't have this patch of shallows here on the left side, so walling off the starting base of the players was very easy. Meanwhile, you cannot wall in these shallows, so basically now the players are playing much more open. It's still possible to wall like this, but the wallability of the maps and definitely decreases, and it is going to be a much more larger emphasis towards land combat. Still, additional changes did occur. So for example, this passage over here was widened out, so it's not just like a few tiles of passage, now it's much larger, and overall the size of the deep fish region was heavily reduced, alongside I think the number of deep fish that is accessible in the lake. Still, the main idea behind this map is that you will fight for a war. The reason why you're picking Japanese over here is because your opponent can actually harass your fishing ships initially with their scout, and with Japanese fishing ships, they just have way more HP, so killing them or harassing them is much harder. Also, it will be very beneficial for their extra health later on when you have war combat, and also Japanese fishing ships gather food faster as well. So Japanese is a very good civilization for this one. Despite the changes here on the left side of the map, I still believe that we will probably see the same way of playing the game as we have seen in the qualifiers. So players might not even bother walling themselves off, because they do expect the other opponent to just go for the docks and focus on the war combat, so they are not afraid of land aggression. But once they see that their opponent is not investing anymore into war, they will have to start walling themselves off and make sure that they are full walled. It's going to be a tricky walling here for Richard, because it has to be a very long distance here on the left side, but it's doable. Double stones at the back, and I would say walling here and here and here seems to be the most reasonable for him, for all the minerals at the back for him to secure. On the other side of things, for Admiral Yi, walling off the left side, is a possibility, even though this gold mine is somewhat exposed. His other gold mine is quite exposed as well, and that makes it a bit scary for him, to be honest. Like, I don't see a super safe gold mine for Admiral Yi. Like, probably his best bet is to wall, like, right from this wood line to right next to the shallows, and then all the way through here. Because if you just wall something like this, archers might be able to range your gold miners, and this is supposed to be your safe gold, and you want to make sure that that is safe, because I don't think that you can actually secure that initially. So, with that, Richard does have one eco lead already, because he does have a dock up, but it's not because of a dock. It is because loom. So basically, Richard was sending out his Voyager without loom, and the scout was trying to cover for him. This is a very risky move, because if your opponent's scout is over here, he might snipe down your Voyager. On the other side, Admiral Yi didn't take a chance. He just goes for loom. This is gonna mean that he's gonna fall behind the eco by 1, and his dock is also gonna be a bit more further towards the deeper waters. It's not a horrible idea, because in the long run having deeper water docks is probably better. However, this will also mean there's a larger walking distance for him, and that means that you are gonna have the dock up late. In fact, if you take a look at that, Richard 20 Voyagers and Admiral Yi just 17. Because he was quite late going in here with the dock. Could you wall the southern side of the dock? Nope. I am almost certain that this is just enough so that you cannot dock block. Seems like this is as wide as it would be on Bay, and Bay is meant to not dock block. Like, I think it is Hank and Algernon who are doing the maps for Hidden Cup, and they are very experienced map makers. And if the request was, hey, let's make it less wallable, they made sure that this is not something that you can dock block. Because dock blocking on shallows is definitely a thing. Not a bad idea, but I don't think that you can do that. I think a dock would cost most of the space, but there would be just a bit of a space left. So I'm 99% sure that you cannot actually dock block this passage here on the left. Anyways, like I said, way better eco for Richard, and that means that he is going to click up and he's gonna pull a very aggressive move here. Interesting. Like I said, you expect your opponent to fight on the water, so you don't expect a land push. As you can see, Admiral Yi is not walling himself to a tiny bit. So this could be the great idea here from Richard, which appears to be men-at-arms towers. Let's take a look at Richard's point of view. He does see the gold mine here on the left, and he does not see this gold. Look at that. He's missing out on this gold by a tile. So still, this is going to be men-at-arms towers approach, and I don't necessarily blame him for it. So he's going to be faster in the Feudal Age by a narrow margin, but he could just go for this gold mine over here. This is actually super interesting because he's like, oh yeah, this is the gold of my opponent, but he's missing out on the much more easily deniable gold, by the way. Anyways, Verges will sneak up, and don't tell me it's gonna be the same plan for Admiral Yi as well. It appears he wants to go forward as well. Whew. This is more than interesting, because this is not a conventional way of playing this map. Luckily for Richard, he's gonna spot this forward attempt, so he's gonna have time to react into this one. As you can see, if you take a look at Richard's point of view, Admiral Yi is trying to evade that Brax. That's very nice from him, so he wants to avoid getting into vision with this one, but you already have the man-at-arms going up for Richard, and meanwhile Admiral Yi does not have the man-at-arms just yet. It's coming in, and he will have to delete the walls, and there is the man-at-arms. Japanese will have an attack bonus or attack speed bonus on their man-at-arms, and one Verger goes down very easily. Meanwhile, on their side, Admiral Yi does have a decent scouting on his opponent, and I do believe he wants to tower here, right next to the wood line and the gold. Like I said, the map is much less vulnerable, and in fact, neither of the players are really contesting war. Like, there is fire galleys coming from both sides, but it's not a big war combat. This became a much more land-heavy map with this nerf, it appears. Anyways, there is gonna be the towers coming up indeed for Admiral Yi. This will need to be counter-towered by Richard. I don't like how Richard is not walling around his towers here. But on the other side of things though, Admiral Yi will have to run away. So the faster uptime of Richard is helping him out big time, because that basically means that he was able to start popping out men-at-arms and towers much faster. Still, I blame Richard for not walling his base around. This is gonna be a stone wall, but there is already the tower coming up here. Now, this is something that could be destroyed by Admiral Yi, by the way. This deletes the stone wall right next to the tower and bashes it down from the inside of the Vergers. On the other side of things, though, it appears that Richard did not pay attention to his gold miners, and that means that one Verger will die to the tower. Others will have to evacuate from the wood line to the north, and the stone miners are dangerously exposed over here. Of course, they are safe from the man-at-arms for now, but a second tower on the stone mine would really cripple Richard's aggression over here. Counter tower coming in here from Admiral Yi, as there are some weak Vergers who are actually building this one, as both towers will go up. No chance for the man-at-arms to pass through. In fact, some of the man-at-arms will also go down over here. On the other side of things, though, oh boy! Don't tell me that that palisade wall was actually destroyed by Admiral Yi, because that appears to be a mining camp destroyed, and it appears to be villager killed, and that only way that actually happens is if you delete the palisade, or you lose the palisade, and your opponent gets into the man-at-arms, so you can't actually escape. So Richard was forced off his stone mines, the men-at-arms are just absolutely shredding him, and we could see a fast ending to this series in this one, because now Richard is losing way too much. He's 26 villagers on the border, he's getting torn apart, I think. Yep, he does have his fishing eco still alive, but he couldn't really push the one from Admiral Yi, and meanwhile there's more villagers dying left and right. No stone income for Richard as of yet, and he's gonna lose this tower as well. What now? What now for Richard? He's behind by eco. He still has a few man-at-arms, but these are so weak, and the only way that Richard could actually deny gold accessible for Admiral Yi would be a tower over here, but that's a long walking distance, and I don't think that he actually has the resources to do that. In fact, he doesn't have any stone income. He's gonna have to tower this gold, so it takes it away from Admiral Yi, and overall, all of his minerals being at the back is gonna hurt quite a bit here for Richard. By the way, these walls are also going down quite rapidly, and Richard is not paying attention. Oh boy. I think this is where it ends for Richard. And I have mixed feelings about Richard. He has had two amazing games, like really, where he was just on point. However, some of his games in this series was just so weird. Very, very underachieving in my point of view, to be honest. So I'm not a major fan of what we have seen here from Richard in the previous two games. Maybe he got exhausted, that's something that I can imagine, because this was a long series, but at this point this is a major advantage for Admiral Yi. Basically, Look at the eco of Richard. He basically has nothing. He's gonna go for an archer range, but this is more about desperation. And meanwhile, Admiral Yi is gonna have enough gold to make more fire galleys. He will clean up his fishing eco. So no gold excess right now for Richard means that no fire galleys. He's gonna lose water control. 4 villagers advantage is significant in such a scenario, especially considering that now Admiral Yi could just start booming on war if he wants to. He's gonna have accessible stone, he's gonna have accessible gold, and he's gonna make his own archer range probably for a response with skirmishers to what his opponent is actually trying to do here. Men-at-arms are still alive, in fact all of them are full HP. This is exceptional from Admiral Yi, and this tower will probably go up as well. It will deny some farms, it will harass the berry villagers, it will harass the lumberjacks. If this tower goes up, that is a GG. There is nowhere to go for Richard, to be honest. There is nowhere to go. No wood lines accessible right now, he's being cut off from everything. He's slowly bashing down this tower to go back into this wood line, but his food eco is going to be an absolute mess. Right now he can still produce villagers, but his farming will be denied. Like I said, I think the berry villagers are somewhat exposed to the tower fire as well. And look what I just said. Towers, if this tower goes up, I think this is over for Richard. Very nicely played from Admiral Yi, he was just so much on point. And not a bad idea from Richard to go for towers over here, but he couldn't react to what we have seen from his opponent. So Richard arrived later with the towers. Oh no, Admiral Yi arrived later with the towers, but Richard couldn't react to that one. Lost a lot of villagers to those men-at-arms. The reaction, the defense from Admiral Yi to the towers aggression was just much better than what we have actually seen from Richard in this one. And that makes him a 4-2 winner in this Hidden Cup show match. 12 kills, 2 deaths for Admiral Yi. This was almost a clean victory. 18 minutes sweep of his opponent. The final 2 games, I definitely can see the signs of exhaustion on Admiral Yi and on Richard. So the thing is that Richard had some great games, especially the hideout game was impressive, but after it, you really had Admiral Yi pushing forward. So I'm not sure if Robo made it. So, yep, what I'm going to do here, and this is going to be the final stage of this series, I'm going to make my guesses. Then I will show off what the players guessed, and after that I will show off the identities of the players. So, in case you haven't seen some games, in case you have, or you want to just take a look at the others, you might not want to hear the identities of the players. I will try to avoid everybody, or try to warn everybody before these spoilers are released. So, my predictions on this one will be Admiral Yi will be MBL, and I will make Richard, the Lionheart, Max. Meanwhile, so this is where it comes. Spoilers, in case you don't want to hear it, please mute the stream right now. I could make this a different color so it actually is visible on the screen, you know. So like something like this. Yeah, seems reasonable. So my predictions, Admiral for MBL and Richard the Lionheart for Max. Meanwhile, for the next one, we will have the players' guesses. So, Admiral guess on Richard, and we will have Richard's guess on Admiral. And then will be Admiral and Richard. You can outline text with white so it's more readable? Sure. So, anyways, there is going to be... Give me a second to outline it. Where's the outlines? So, outline. There it is. Oof, this is a bit ugly, but I think it's fine. Like, you're supposed to see that. Not a fancy overlay, but I think this is more than visible. So, my guess is, for Admiral Sun-Shin, I'm saying MBL. For Richard, the Lionheart will have Max. I guess, so Richard is saying his opponent is Max. This is interesting. Richard's guess on the identity of the Admiral is Max. I think I'm fairly certain it is that way. And meanwhile, Admiral guessed fire. So, interesting. They are not even close to my predictions. So Admiral says Richard is fire. I could agree with that one, but Richard guessed on Admiral, me being Max, means that Richard was definitely not Max. And now comes the spoilers. If you don't want to hear it, turn away. It will not influence the entire big tournament, because they will have other identities, so you don't have to worry about that. This was just identities for this show match, and it will not be used in the future. Richard was the Gao. Oh man, I was looking at his build so hard and I couldn't identify the Gao. He was using different builds than he's actually using in his build order videos. Man, like, for those who don't know, Dogao is my coach, so I know his build orders so well. He has provided me with a bunch of build order videos and stuff like that, and I can tell you, if there's one player whose mindset is in my head, it is Dogao. So, I am absolutely stunned by this. And meanwhile, on the other side of things, for Admiral Sun-Shin, we will have Verges. Whoa. Now, the matchup is fairly even, and you can see that my predictions were pure garbage. So, well, this is confusing. Like, I would have almost bet my life that Admiral Sun-Shin was MBL, but turns out it's Verges. Interesting. Interesting to take a look at. And I gotta say, I am somewhat surprised, because I thought that I know Dogao's build orders so well. But he was using it differently than what he's actually showing off in his coaching videos. So I'll have to rewatch this series and check what he has changed. Because, like I said, if there's one player whose build orders I know quite well, one player whose style I know well, if there's one player whose way of thinking I know well, it is Dogao. And I couldn't even think about him being Dogao. I was like, could this be Dogao? And I was like, then, no, there's no way this is Dogao. This can't be Dogao. And he is. Verges, that's even more surprising, felt much more about MBL, and this is scary for Hidden Cup. Like, Verges has paid out of his mind. That micro with the traps with the Arblasts on Hideout was magnificent. So, I gotta say, I'm stunned by these identities, and this is why it's so good to have Hidden Cup. I thought Richard was an Asian player. He did choose a lot of home maps for himself that were war maps. Like, oops, that's not the one. This is the one. So, for him, he selected Hideout Bay High Tide. This means that this is not the Fat Dragon. The Fat Dragon doesn't like war maps that much. Vivi likes to play more on land maps, so I was certain that this is not the Fat Dragon. But aside from that, could have been Yo. But that's alright. Richard's guess on Admiral was Max, and it turned out to be Verges. So Dogao had a fairly good prediction on his opponent, just missed out on the wrong Suomi player. Meanwhile, Admiral's guess on Richard was fire. Interesting. So they actually had the nationality of the player, but I want to point out a very, very minor thing that we are forgetting over here, and I think that is going to be the closing words for my YouTube video for this, because I will upload this entire series to YouTube. Guessing the nationality of the player is not this hard for these players, because they know when they play. We don't know when this series was played. Was it in the morning Europe time? Was it in the evening Europe time? So for example, for Verges, if he knows that, hey, we are playing after 17 GMT, this is probably not a Chinese or Vietnamese player, more about a player like Hera, player like Fire the Gao. So the time zones definitely help you identify the geographical location of the player you're actually matching up against. This is an information we're not seeing here. So just the nationality guess might not be that indicative towards the guessing. It's more about the fact that I think Vilas versus Max is a very, very close one. Fire versus the Gao, I think it's a bit further away, but I'm definitely surprised about these. Anyways, I think I'm gonna sign off to